No wise man would ever guess or suggest that Father's Day could possibly be as important as Mother's Day.
I threw that down in the minefield right away, didn't I, this morning? So it's not.
Let's ask Debbie. We should probably get Debbie on the phone and find out what she thinks of that.
She's weird about this kind of stuff. She says, I don't think like that. And that's what she would say. I can hear her right now. She's driving to work. She's listening. She's rolling her eyes. I don't think like that. She doesn't think of days in terms of comparative. She thinks in terms of the value of the day by itself. I know what she does. But but the point being, mothers are such great multitaskers.
Yes,
I always like that thing comes out each year. How much would a mother's job be worth if she was paid? And it always is like a six-figure, and I think that's probably underpaid a little bit, a six-figure job. They do all these things. And we're kind of geared more to, I'm going here, I'm going there, one thing at a time.
Well, we haven't adjusted for inflation if you're using six figures, I would suggest.
I agree with you. Anyway, we got a lot going on today here. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Los Angeles. I've got a question of the day up today, by the way, and I've given this question a couple different incarnations this week, Aaron, but the question for the day today, and you go to Gary Sutton's show on Facebook.com. When it comes to the protests and immigration enforcement in Los Angeles, I have LA, and other cities around the country, is President Trump simply trying to enforce the law, or is he a bully trying to take more power than he's allowed to have as President of the United States? What are your thoughts on that? I want you to think that over this morning, because I think there's a case. It depends on your perception. It depends on where you're looking at this from. But we're watching a whole lot of things going on. I don't know if there's any one simple answer, but Aaron, as you look at that and ponder it a little bit on first blush, and we'll be doing a lot of blushes with this morning, what are your thoughts? Yeah,
I think Americans, I was reading this morning, Gary, that Americans are pretty split on how this is being handled, and not surprisingly along political lines. Republicans are pretty in favor, Democrats are against. I think many people are most uncomfortable about the idea of the U.S. military sort of hitting the streets, and at the same time, people are uncomfortable with this idea that that local state and state governments and local municipalities would not be enforcing law, and I think it's really putting the American people in a pretty tough spot. It's a classic, state versus federal. Whose responsibility is it to enforce the law?
Federalism is the sharing of law between the national and the state governments. Right. That's what federalism is. That's the brilliance of our founding fathers, that they understood there was a sharing of power among the different law enforcement people in the country, law-making people in the country, that we had state legislatures, we had a federal legislature, that we had a state executive, we had a federal executive, that we have state courts, we have federal courts, and somehow we found a way to share that. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, that seems to be out of kilter right now, and yet at the same time, the point being that you made, I think it's a good one, if states aren't doing their job, if cities aren't doing their job, if we have, for example, people who say, well, okay, we have federal law over here, but we're not going to enforce it because we're going to have a sanctuary city over here, yet we want federal money to come to us, you're getting into a real murky area when people don't do their jobs, and that really seems to throw the balance out of kilter too, doesn't it?
It does. And at the same time, you think about, here we have this happening in Los Angeles, but if this starts happening in New York, D.C., Chicago, and we start sending National Guard and Marines all around the country,
not a good look.
That's not a great spot for the country to be in.
No, it's not. And you start to look at this and say, here is the one thing. When President Trump said, I'm going to deport people who are here illegally, and he said, we're going to start with gangs and crime, people who are committing crimes and all that. And I think people probably all had, some agreement on that. And then it kind of went to, and next in line is, and that's where we're getting into right now. And I said right in the very beginning of this, I said, this is not going to be pretty. This is not going to be your Chamber of Commerce move. There are a lot of people that say, well, there's a lot of people in my community now who came here illegally, and yet we've gotten kind of comfortable with people and as fellow human beings. And so I think we have to look at this in two different ways. How do we look at people as human beings? How do we look at people as citizens, non-citizens? And is there a happy medium in between there? I'm not sure if there is or not. What are your thoughts?
Well, and I also think, we have a system of courts and laws, and I think, we go back, everybody's talking about due process now. I think there's the courts also are a key place where some of this is going to need to be battled out. So if people are found that they've broken laws, they're here illegally, there are courts to deal with that. And I do think the American people tend to trust our system of laws, and I think that's part of the solution here as well.
Problem is that we have so many cases coming at us now. We almost have this court fatigue at the moment. I think we have two kinds of fatigue. Number one, we have a Trump fatigue, which we have so many things being worked on every day that are out in front of us, and we're like, oh my gosh, what's today? And so you have this entire blizzard of things coming at you, and then you have a blizzard of responses from the courts, and you say, well, where do we go with all this? Isn't there a right and wrong? Aren't there polar ends here where there are answers, and we don't seem to ever have answers? And then we hear later on, oh, this court case has been settled. Oh, I forgot about that. That's back here. So we have this fatigue, I think, right now of information that's coming at us on top of the normal information barrage we get in society. And now we have this on top of it. I think it's really tough.
Well, I think that's I've read and heard that, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but the flood the zone strategy of let's just flood the daily news wires with so much information. I think what you said right there, Gary, is I have felt acutely is the fatigue, to the point of where you almost just want to turn and look away and ignore it and go do, and I think you and I have talked about that. I've spent a lot of time locally doing things as opposed to worrying about what's happening nationally. Yeah,
I find myself doing a lot of that too. I have to keep my eye on that every day, but I think, okay, what are we doing for our corner of the world? And that's a positive thing. That's something that can be positive. But I think the big mistake that we would have is stepping away from this stuff and saying, let them do what they're going to do. I think we did that. Right. And I think we see what that hath wrought to us over the years by some of us stepping away from that. Today, by the way, on a little bit lighter note, is National Jerky Day. Are you a jerky person at all?
I love beef jerky. That would be a great. My kids I'm sure they're up early listening right now. That'd be a great Father's Day.
Put that on the list. Jerky?
National Jerky Day.
I don't know if I'd see that as a great
Unless
present.
It means that you stop being a jerk.
Well, see, that's what I was worried about. There's a double entendre there. And National Peanut Butter Cookie Day.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, also great.
It's also National Chocolate Donut Day here in our studio.
Yes, and you brought them in for me and Chase. Thank you so much.
And myself, I have to admit, 3 days to Father's Day.
Share the love.
Or as it's known of in the Anderson family, Christmas, and 22 days to Independence Day, which is getting closer and closer very quickly. So we have a lot to do this morning. We've got Chris Markowski, the Wassac on Wall Street, coming up, but we're going to come back and we're going to hit a few maybe lighter things, and also a little bit more about what's happening nationally and statewide and right here locally. Aaron Anderson is my co-host for today, and we're going to be going through a lot of things a little differently than maybe we normally do. Chase is here this morning, Chase Hellwig, doing a great job as producer, sitting in for Mark McKenzie today. Mark will be back, I think, next week, unless he really falls in love with the beach. And we'll do all of that right here on The Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. Back with more right after this.
The name Cooperstown became synonymous with baseball immortality on June 12, 1939, when the doors to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum officially opened for the first time. The Baseball
It was
Hall
on
of
this
Fame
day,
had been
Gary,
established 3 years
86
earlier.
years ago
with the
in
election of the
1939,
first
the
five
Baseball Hall of Fame opened in Cooperstown, New York, where legend has it the baseball itself had been invented by Abner Doubleday exactly 100 years earlier.
Now, Abner Doubleday is interesting. And I just went on a 2-hour tour of Gettysburg the other week for the heck of it. I've been on a million tours over there, but I learned some new stuff. You know, Abner Doubleday was the guy who took over for the first general, the only general, shot and killed on the battlefield for the Grand Army of the Potomac, okay, the Army of the Potomac. And he was from Lancaster. Well, the guy that took over for him was General Abner Doubleday, who is most famous for inventing baseball. There's some question even about that. But anyway, I went to Cooperstown back in 1971, 70 or 71. I was in a golf tournament called the ECAC, the Eastern College Athletic Conference. And in that tournament were Army and Penn State and all these different things. Well, I finished third in that tournament at Bucknell University.
It's not bad.
By finishing third, I think I shot 71. I finished third. So we went to Cooperstown for the final. They have a huge golf course right down on the lake there. And at the end of this golf course, at the end of the 18th hole, they have this huge hotel. And obviously in town is the Hall of Fame. So I went to play in this golf tournament, but I was more interested in kind of going to see the Hall of Fame. So I remember getting up the one morning and I went over to Doubleday Field, which is the baseball field right there at the Hall of Fame. And I sat by myself in the morning mist and just kind of thought about, you know, baseball, the Hall of Fame, the whole thing. And I ended up watching the sixth game of the, I guess it was 71, the sixth game of the World Series that year between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, which Baltimore unfortunately eventually lost, at the Hall of Fame. I watched the sixth game at the Hall of Fame. A really neat place. And, you know, you think about the history that's in there and all the people, it's pretty darn incredible. So,
Do you know the first three players that were inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I'm going to say Honus Wagner,
That is one.
Ty Cobb,
That's two.
and Babe Ruth.
That's three.
How's that?
There you go,
Yeah,
Gary.
those
Babe
three-
Ruth, Ty Cobb, and Honus Wagner.
Right. So, and that's why you always hear about the Honus Wagner baseball card being one that is that's big. I was looking at some other things this morning as I was ranking some things, and we were talking yesterday about things we could not live without. And we'll get Aaron back in here for a few minutes now. Aaron, we were talking yesterday about inventions we couldn't live without. And there were a lot of people that come up with ideas, just like someone said, the wheel. Obviously, the wheel is something we don't think about much, but our cars and everything else, I mean, we get around pretty clunky if it was a square. But what is the number one beverage we can't live without today? The fact that a coffee and soda company did this poll makes it a little suspect. But it's hard to argue this isn't true. The company that owns Keurig, Dr. Pepper, and a bunch of other brands just released its first ever State of Beverages report. I suspect this will be before Congress eventually. And it found the most important drink of them all is, now you'll never guess, coffee. It's the top beverage that Americans say they cannot live without. And I know a lot of people. There you go. What are you carrying this morning?
It's in my hand right here, Gary. Yeah, I was going to say I inventions can't live without beverages. It's going to have to be coffee. I'm not English, so it's not tea. It's coffee. Yeah, that's American rebellion coming out right there. You see that?
And you have that rebellious spirit. I can see that.
Rebellious.
Yeah, it's shining through. But my wife would say tea. My wife has all these different kinds of teas. She loves tea. So my wife would fight back on that. Neither of us drink coffee.
Interesting.
I have never drank coffee. I've had a couple cups, but it's just, now, I love to smell it. And obviously, we live in a great area here to smell that with Starbucks, with a plant. So every now and then, the winds are all moving in the right direction. But what is it about coffee in the morning? Is it just, because the taste to me is not something that is, but I'm in the minority.
It's probably an acquired taste, but I would say my wife and I every morning, there's something relaxing about coffee. Now, my grandmother ruined me when I was a child. drinking coffee because she would put a lot of cream and a lot of
yeah.
sugar. And anyone who watches my diet would know I love a lot of sugar. So my coffee, I don't drink it like probably real men do, like hard and black. And no, mine is it's creamy and sugary, and it's like a dessert.
62% say they agree with the statement that my day doesn't start until I've had a cup of coffee. In my case, it's a Diet Coke, which is not good for you. But I don't like sugar in my stuff. But the Diet Coke, outside of the chocolate donut this morning, the Diet Coke is where I go. Now, the nice thing about Diet Coke, you can also fuel your car with that. Probably it's
that is the breakfast of champions. Diet Coke and a donut.
Diet Coke and a donut. I mean, how bad does that sound? But and then someone would say, drinking coffee every morning is my happy place. See, I see a lot of people drinking coffee is like a celebration in the morning, where people will go in and drink it. My mother used to drink it jet black, and it smelled burnt to me, and I thought, ooh, that's not a good. When someone burns coffee, to me that's like one of the worst smells you can humanly have. But it doesn't mean that coffee is our favorite drink, though. It's just the one we need in order to function each day. America's favorite beverage is soda. 53% enjoy the taste more than any other beverage. So, a good Diet Coke, excuse me.
Bright and early. When is too early to drink a Diet Coke, Gary?
There isn't too early. I mean, now I move into unsweetened iced tea later in the day, and occasionally an Arnold Palmer with unsweetened iced tea, adding to the lemonade, adding to a little bit of sweetness there, which is the one time I do allow a little bit of sweetness in my drink, which, by the way, speaking of Arnold Palmer, today is the beginning of the United States Open right here in Pennsylvania at Oakmont Country Club. They're saying Oakmont is one of the toughest venues to ever host a U.S. Open. They've hosted 9 U.S. Opens. You want to know how many players have broken par cumulatively on all 9? How many do you think, and this is professionals, the best of the best, the Tiger Woods, those kind of people. How many people have broken par cumulatively? In other words, all the people broke par over 9 U.S. Opens hosted there at Oakmont, right out here near Pittsburgh in Oakmont, Pennsylvania.
I'll go less than 50.
23.
23
people have broken par.
Wow.
The saying is that the members get mad at the United States Golf Association, who sets up the tournament, because they make it easier than it is for the members.
Oh.
Their greens, I was playing golf, and I want to congratulate someone yesterday. I was playing golf with Scott Nouse yesterday, a good friend of mine. We play golf 2-3 days a week. And Scott had a hole-in-one yesterday out of our third hole at Regents Glen. Knocked it in with a 9-iron. And, he had, but he was talking to us. He played Oakmont twice. And he said, I would stand, he said, I'll tell you 2 stories about it. He said, number one, when you stand on the greens at Oakmont, he said, you can take your ball, throw it down on the green, and they'll bounce back up into your hand. They're that hard, okay? And they said, the second thing was, he said, so my first putt, he said, I was practice putting. This guy said, go over here and practice putt. They had this green, and he had about a 35-foot putt. So the guy said, hit it like you're going to hit about a 3-footer. Wow. So he putts it like a 3-footer. It rolled off the green and 100 yards down the hill.
Oh, my goodness.
A 34-foot putt, and he had 100 and some yards coming back. And he said that, and that's what you're going to be seeing. They say if you get behind the pins at Oakmont and you have downhill putts, forget it. You can't stop it.
Game over.
You can't stop it. And so what you're going to watch this week, if you just watch today on TV, you want to see guys brought to their knees, you're going to see some people brought to their knees. Most of the tournaments at Oakmont, with very few exceptions, have ended over par for the winners.
Wow.
I think that one of the last ones I remember was the 7 over par for one of the winners, but which makes Johnny Miller 63, 7 under the last day back in 19, whatever it was, 70 or whatever. One of the historic, unbelievable rounds ever. But Oakmont is really ridiculous. I went through it. I was going out to a funeral the other week, and I went through it. They had all the scaffolding up and the TV towers and everything. The turnpike goes right through the middle of Oakmont.
Wow.
Yeah, just before you get to the...
Have you played it?
I've never played it. I've wanted to play it, but they say anyone who would have a regular handicap, just let's say someone who goes out in an 18 handicap, it will be unplayable. They probably couldn't finish. that it's that bad.
So they would probably throw me off the course after two or three holes.
You might throw you off the course.
I would probably throw myself.
I might throw me off the course. I think for any of us who are less than being a pro, but it is supposed to be unbelievable and diabolical.
Wow.
They do have one hole, by the way, which you'll love. Has a set of trap, rough, trap, rough, trap, rough, trap, rough down the left-hand side, and it's called the church pews.
The church pews.
And it's very famous. It's a very famous hole. The church pews.
Sounds like a hole that you might lose your religion on, Gary.
You might, yeah. Anyway, Chris Markowski, the watchdog on Wall Street, is coming up next here as we take a look at some of the numbers that come out this week on the economy, some of the ways that things are going right now. He'll have some thoughts this morning on Donald Trump and maybe some things on what's happening in L.A., and we'll do it all together next here on the Gary Sutton Show. It is a Thursday morning here on WOYK. So great to have you aboard. This is the Main Street of York. We'll be back with more right after this. It's 6:30. Dancing music coming back here this morning. It sounds like Madonna. Am I correct on that, Chase?
Sorry to swing the mic back. Yeah, Madonna, Borderline.
There you go.
From
Borderline.
1984.
I like this song.
I'm glad you like it, Gary.
Yeah, that was when Madonna still looked like Madonna. And today, I don't even know what she looks like.
I'll tell you what, in 84, she's a looker. I'll give you that.
Well, she was. You want to talk about a person who merchandised themselves well. She was a really good business person, and maybe still is. I don't know. But she would, at one point in time, now, some people could question how she did that, but, that's,
we don't talk about that.
She could sing.
Yeah.
She could sing.
I mean, sing real well.
Yeah, and a very good entertainer, and has done a lot of different things over the years. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show here on WOYK. It is the main street of York, and with us this morning, Chris Markowski, the watchdog on Wall Street. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing pretty well. Were you a Madonna fan at all, Chris?
Oh, way back in the day, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Especially during the 80s. I mean, she was kind of like a trailblazer back at that point in time. How couldn't it be?
Well,
but it was, she kind of changed her look up until like the 90s and everything like that. And,
right.
Then, in an effort to, try to defy nature and gravity and try to stay, 25 forever, she kind of looks a little different now. And if you would have told me back in the 90s that Roseanne Barr would look better than Madonna, I would tell you were nuts. But
I know. Yeah. Roseanne got better looking. Her voice, by the way, is not better than Madonna's. We know that from the San Diego national anthem that one time. Was like, might want to stay away from that. But anyway, so the craziness goes on. The economy. A lot of people are looking at numbers this week, like the CPI came out, and inflation numbers, and so forth. Do you put very much stock in that stuff coming out? How do you translate that?
My inflation numbers are different than the government's numbers. I kind of go old school and use the ones that Paul Volcker used to use and pay closer attention to that. I mean, each and every one of us, they can tell us what inflation is, but we all know. I mean, we
right.
all we go pay our bills. We see what we spend every single day, and we know how it affects us. So, I'm not listening. I don't listen to what the government says. I mean, we know better than them.
The president says yesterday he got a deal with China. It looks like it's a limited deal on some stuff with minerals and all that. It's not the tariff deal. The tariff is still around 55%, and it looks like there's a lot of other numbers there that haven't really changed a whole lot. So the markets kind of react to that. And again, I know how you feel about the markets, but talk a little bit about a lot of people have so much information coming at them now from the Trump administration on a daily basis. You're fatigued. You're worn out. You don't quite know what to look at, and yet you're trying to kind of stay up with the story. It's like speed reading a book. You're trying to speed reading and get some out of it, and it's tough to kind of do. From a guy who lives in a world of numbers like you do, how do you speed read this book that Trump's putting out there every day?
You do it. You kind of take things with a grain of salt. I mean, I've gotten some sort of an exhaustion from all of this stuff as well, and you try to take out what's most important, and understanding that tomorrow might look completely different than today, based upon the news cycles and what they go out and say. The deal with China, again, it's not really much of a deal. I think right now, they're trying to walk back as much as they possibly can. A lot of the things that were done back in the beginning of April with this Liberation Day thing, we want to, in my opinion, you want to do business. You want to call on people like China's our enemy, it's our adversary. No, we kind of need one another, quite frankly, in the same way that the Yankees need the Red Sox, to play games. Right. And we need to do business with China, and you want to do business. The more business that's done with countries that you might not see eye to eye to, the less you're going to go ahead and start shooting at each other. And this is the reason why I think that, again, you're going to try to walk these things back as quickly as they can.
One of the things I said in the beginning, but I remember when I saw President Trump come out on the stage and there in the office with this kid dancing all over his head was Elon Musk. And I said to someone, that is not going to last real long. No one occupies the stage with Donald Trump very long. Well, that obviously broke down. You had a whole lot of words the last 2 weeks. And now Elon Musk, the billionaire, the tech entrepreneur, the former top White House DOJ officer, has gradually taken steps to kind of restore this relationship over the last few days. What do you make out of this whole thing? I mean, for me, it was silliness. It was a lot of talking, things you shouldn't be saying about each other. You did. And two big egos kind of colliding. And now it looks like maybe Musk has backed down a little bit. What's your take on that whole deal?
Not sure. I don't know what was said behind the scenes. I guess they had spoken to one another, beforehand. I guess before Elon had put out that latest tweet. It's hard to follow, and again, it's quite childish.
Right.
A lot of it, But Elon, he was pretty, he didn't deviate at all from what his original points were. I mean, from the beginning, He said he didn't like the tariffs. He never liked the spending bill, and you got to understand his frustration when it comes to Doge and the fact that Congress can't even vote on $9 billion in rescissions. They still haven't voted on that yet.
Right.
$9 billion. It's like nothing. The rounding, not even a rounding error, for crying out loud. And they can't even get together to put those savings into play. So I get it. I understand it.
I see where Musk pulled back. The most salacious X post that he put out was an accusation that Trump's name is mentioned in classified files related to Jeffrey Epstein. And then he also deleted the post he made during the feud endorsing Trump's impeachment. Yeah, probably not good things to put out there during an argument that the guy you're working for you want to see impeached. But it looks like he's apologizing. So you look at Trump. I've never heard Trump really apologize or back down. That probably doesn't collide in the same sentence. When you look at this guy, I mean, he is a scorched earth guy. I mean, when he goes after you, he's going full bore, right? I mean, we're seeing that in a lot of the things that he does right now. Compared to last time when he was president, he's coming this time pointed on everything he wants to do, and yet he negotiates on everything he wants to do. It's kind of a weird combination. How do you make sense out of any of that, Chris?
You can't. Well, again, I get you don't want to back down, but again, that's kind of like saying that you can never be wrong on anything.
Right.
A wise man learns from a fool learns from nobody. I say this all the time when I do my program. I said, you disagree with me, you want to challenge me on anything that I've said or the facts that I've said, please.
Yes.
I want to know, because I want to know if I was wrong. Because the goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to come to some sort of truth and try to make the world a better place. The concept of backing, don't look at it as backing down. Look at it as you actually learn something, which is a positive.
One of the things that he has done, and you mentioned, he's the numbers on the southwestern border are way down as far as people coming into the country. But when the president came out during the campaign and said, listen, we get in there, I'm going to deport people who are here illegally, and I'm going to start with the bad guys. I'm going to start with, the gangs. I'm going to start with the people who are criminals. I'm going to start with all of them. And he has. And we've seen some of the stuff that happened with Abrego Garcia and so forth. And yet at the same time, in doing that, you knew it wasn't going to be Chamber of Commerce stuff. You knew that we're going to come to a moment like we're having right now in Los Angeles, that we're about to see in other places around the country with this No Kings rally over the weekend. ICE is going in now and really getting at it. So the president is sticking by his word and saying, I promised I was going to do this. Now I'm going to do this. And people are saying he's overstepping his bounds. But I think it's not just two-sided. It's more complicated than that, where you've got like these people with the sanctuary cities, sanctuary states saying, we're not going to help ICE. And yet when ICE goes in to do their job, they're also not, keeping violence down in their areas. They're not keeping the protests down that have become violent in their areas. And so you get all this stuff going on. Make some sense out of L.A. for me and what's going on out there right now. Is Trump just a bully, or is he a president trying to make sure that we're going by the law and doing what we say we're going to do?
Well, I mean, technically we can go by, the law of the land, and we'd be, every single time I basically get in my car, I'm going to get pulled over because I probably broke the speed limit at some point in time. I am totally behind him going after, and the country is totally behind him going after deporting any sort of criminal element that has come into the country. The problem is that if we were to do, I'm going to do a Marvel movie reference here, with Thanos, and we had a glove and we could snap our fingers and make every single legal person, disappear and go back to their home country, our economy would come to a halt. It's the reality. That's a reality. If we make them all go away, all of the millions of people that are here, the economy would come to a halt. We have to come up with some sort of system. And there was a representative in Miami, Florida, that's put together something where you can slowly but surely, and it's like a 15-year process that she put together where you can eventually get yourself right and end up becoming a citizen. And even if you want to do that, just not become a citizen, a program where you can actually find yourself and get yourself working papers and do things the right way. Part of the problem with having all these illegals doing these jobs, and again, we need them to do these jobs need to be done, is more often than not, they're not getting a prevailing wage, and you want them to get a prevailing wage because you don't want wages to be driven down by anything like this. You want them to get right with the law. Well, we've got a problem here in this country. There's no way, okay? How long is it going to take? Their goal is to deport 3,000 people a day. How do you deport how long is it going to take to deport millions of people at 3,000 a day? I mean, it's crazy. And the costs involved with that, it's not going to work. I mean, you'd rather have these people get right with the law and figure something out because the costs involved with this are just insane.
What is interesting to me, and you kind of hit on where I go on this. I look at it from this side, and people say, are you opposed to people coming to the country? I said, no. But what I want when people are in this country is that they have the same rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that I have. And when they have that Damocles sword of you could be deported, you could be sent back, you could be taken advantage of, you're dependent upon this and that and the other thing, hanging over them all the time, they are never going to rise to a chance to have the same kind of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness that I have. Their ceiling is limited. And that's where I kind of come to that somehow we have to make it so they can go higher than being a busboy at a restaurant or just a laborer, where they have the right to start a business. They have a right to do things. And I'm not saying some maybe even haven't done that, but for the most part, they're really kept. It's almost like a sub-slavery kind of situation in a lot of ways because of what you said, not having a decent wage, having to be paid under the table a lot of times. And it doesn't help the economy that way either when you undercut what was a living wage before, and now you're making a lot less in places like meat packing plants and so forth than you ever made before because of illegal labor in the country. So somewhere we've got to, I like what you said, we got to get it right. Got to figure it out. Final thoughts of this morning, Chris?
No, yeah, I do believe that's the case. Like I said, Salazar put together a great program, this Dignity and Redemption program. What I think would be great. Should put it forward in 2023. I do think you got to control the border. That's they did that. It's a success story now. Now what's the next step? Let's come to grips with the fact that you're not going to go around deporting millions of people. It's just not going to happen. If you really wanted to do that, and that's the point, this is why this is a show to me. If you really wanted to do that, you would just enforce E-Verify and not give anybody sort of handouts and giveaways. Because if that's the case, everybody would self-deport. But they're not even doing that. So what is this all about? And to think that all these protests are taking place, these aren't illegals that are protesting. These are citizens, for crying out loud. What illegal person is going to fly a Mexican flag and go to a rally so they can get themselves arrested and deported? So I don't know what all that's about. That's something else that's going on right now.
Yeah, at the end of the day, though, I think where Trump's gotten it right, he's just said, okay, let's stop the flow into the country. All right, yeah. It looks like he's doing a pretty good job. Now, you stop the flow. Okay, let's get rid of the bad guys. Nobody has a problem with that for the most part. We'll deport them out, get rid of them, get them to other jurisdictions, take care of, getting them to where they have to be held accountable. And now, what do you do with the people who've lived here for 10, 20 years? Now maybe you get into the area you talked about where you somehow work out something where we can get this done. And then forevermore going forward, let's keep those numbers down at the borders. Let's make sure we enforce visas. Let's make sure that we're taking care of things coming into other ports of entry in the country. Let's get it right and take care of finally doing something about this. It makes some sense for everybody concerned. Final thoughts.
Yeah, as far as life is concerned, compassion always needs to be job one. I'm just a big believer in that. It's my Catholic sensibilities.
Yep.
But that needs to be first and foremost, and we have to be that type of a nation and lead as an example. Have a program, have something that makes sense, make them learn the language, make them learn civics, and make them Americans. There's nothing wrong with making them more Americans.
Yeah, go back to assimilating and not just plopping down in the country and taking whatever you get. But having the sky as the limit, I think, is something in the long run that we would aspire for all people. Hey, Chris, good stuff this morning, man. Really appreciate the conversation. I'll catch you next Thursday, okay?
You got it. Have a good one.
Thanks, buddy. You too. Take care. Chris Markowski, the watchdog on Wall Street, right here on the Gary Sutton Show. We're at 6:48. Back with some news under the radar. Aaron and I will have some thoughts on some different subjects here coming back, all here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.
picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations.
I don't care what generation you're from, you know this sound. It's the Beach Boys, right? Good Vibrations, and Beach Boys founder Brian Wilson has died at the age of 82. Now, the fact that Brian Wilson made it to 82 is kind of amazing. His family didn't announce the exact date or cause of death, but he was diagnosed with dementia and placed in a conservatorship last year. He was 82 years old. Wilson was considered one of the great pop songwriters of all time. And under his guidance, the Beach Boys' output rivaled that of the Beatles. I mean, they put out songs. Now, they all sound like the same song, but they put out the songs. I mean, even the Little Saint Nick song, I mean, they all sound like the same song, but they had the unmistakable sound of the Beach Boys, which was kind of universal, Aaron, and Aaron Anderson with me here this morning. But he was plagued by drug addiction and mental illness throughout his whole life. By 1964, he had stopped touring with the band. This led to hiatuses and outright feuds with his bandmates, along with several reconciliations over the years. Wilson is survived by his daughters, Carney and Wendy, who found success in the group Wilson Phillips, and 5 adopted children from his second marriage. The Beach Boys issued a statement on their website saying, in part, Brian Wilson wasn't just the heart of the Beach Boys, he was the soul of our sound. The melodies he dreamed up and emotions he poured into every single note changed the course of music forever. Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones summed up what a lot of people are probably feeling right now. Quote, "Oh no, Brian Wilson and Sly Stone in 1 week. My world is in mourning," quote unquote. Brian's daughter, Carney, posted a statement on Instagram saying, quote, "I have no words to express the sadness I feel right now. My father was every fiber of my body. I love you, Daddy. I miss you so much. You already. I miss you so much already." So there you go. Brian Wilson, the heart and soul of the Beach Boys. Aaron, any thoughts this morning on Brian Wilson?
Yeah, they were real popular in the early 60s, so it's a little before my era. Now, my dad, though, Gary,
Thanks.
I got you. My dad was playing guitar in probably a Beach Boys type band down in Virginia Beach back in the same era. So yeah, this one kind of hits close to home.
Yeah, so the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. And, of course, speaking of good vibrations, Chase, we've got a little word this morning from last night's Atlantic League game between the Revs and Hagerstown. Let's hear a little bit about that.
1-0. And a swing and a drive, deep left field. Watch this one go. A bomb from Simonite. He hits another one. 2-run blast to left. And man, did he kill it. And the Revs now lead it 5-1 here in the 4th inning.
The Revs winning their 13th straight over Hagerstown. They're second in a row now. They lost on Sunday in that comeback win by Lexington. They are now 27-14, the most games over 500 they've had this season. They have Long Island and Lancaster tied for second. Well, no. Let me take it back. Long Island's in second, 5 back at 22-19 in the Northern Division of the Atlantic League. Lancaster is 6 back at 21-20. And Staten Island Ferry Hawks, who are fading fast, are 19-22. They're 8 back now. And, of course, Hagerstown, 18 back. And the other side, High Point Rockers are 29-12, the only team with a better record than the Revs in the entire league, and they are leading by 8 games in the division over the Charleston Dirty Birds and also the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs, who are tied for second. So the Revs win again, and they will try to finish off Hagerstown today a little bit later on, and we'll be getting all of that for you here on WOYK. I'm just trying to look right here what time the game is today, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so let me just run down here very quickly. Today is the 12th. And let's see, York playing Hagerstown today. That game at 6:30 tonight. 6:10 will be airtime. Darryl will have that for you right here on WOYK. So I'll tell you what, they're rocking and rolling right now. Do you get down to many Revs games at all, Aaron?
I have. This is a great year to come down and watch the Revs. They're playing lights out right now.
They really are. And now they've played Hagerstown a lot of games so far. And Hagerstown with a bad record, but they also are playing well against other teams, and I think they've won something like 9 out of their last 10 series that they have played against teams so far. So the Revs playing great baseball. Not any one person with a lot of power, but the whole lineup has power up and down throughout, and so really a lot of fun watching what they're doing right now. But you had a story this morning in a beekeeper magazine of all things, and you caught my ear on that. So tell me a little bit about this story.
You know how much I love beekeeping, Gary, and I jest. I know literally.
You don't have time for that.
Literally nothing about beekeeping. But I saw on the news this morning that the Wright brothers' first flight was actually reported in a beekeeping magazine, and I'm wondering, Gary, like who's reading beekeeping magazines back in that era? But that's where the first flight of man is reported in a beekeeping magazine.
Bumblebees fly. I guess somewhere you could make a really weak segue into that, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it tells you how much flight was considered important at that point in time, right?
And the magazine. I mean, have you ever read Gleanings in Bee Culture? That's the title of the magazine.
I read the sequel. The bees are back. This time they're mad. Yeah, I think I've never read, and yet I know people who are beekeepers who are. Isn't there a movie out, The Beekeeper?
Yes, it's a great movie.
That guy, and he's every movie he's in, he beats the crap out of everybody.
Yes.
But yeah, I did watch The Beekeeper.
The Beekeeper. That's it. I don't think that's connected to the Wright brothers flight, but important nonetheless.
I wonder what the first magazine was about handing nuts out on the flight. Who had that? I don't know. Planners Magazine or something.
We'll have to go maybe next week. We'll figure.
Yeah, we'll do all that. But yeah, that was a weird one. And I was looking this morning at some news that was interesting. College grads. Now you're interested in this because you're at education. College grads can't find work because of AI. Now, the scary thing is that jobless young people often become criminals or worse, influencers. That's, it's bad enough that they become criminals, but if you become an influencer, that's really tough. Yeah. Just saying.
You can't find jobs because of AI. That would be news to me. Gary, as an educator, I've yet to have a student tell me they couldn't get a job because of AI.
Yeah. And by the way, it's mosquito season, I saw. Mosquitoes are those annoying things that have thousands of babies at once, kind of like Elon Musk. It's similar to that. Anyway, coming up next, Joel Sears likes to look at policy. And Aaron and I are going to look at policy with Joel Sears this morning when he joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show. And we talk a little bit about that. And some of the things that Aaron gets into will be very interesting. Then at 7:35, we got Dennis Owens from ABC 27 News to wade into the world of politics. My goodness, do I have the strength? We do. And it's all coming next hour here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.
York's only local show is back on its new home on York's only local station.
Guess who's back again?
This is the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.
I'm back.
Now, broadcasting live from WOYK's downtown York studios inside Wellspan Park, here's Gary Sutton.
And welcome back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show. We're at 7:05 on a Thursday morning. It is the 12th of June, 2025. 66 degrees here on Brooks Robinson Plaza at the Wellspan Park, where we are located. And our presenting sponsor is Barley Snyder Attorneys at Law. Barley Snyder is a strategically focused law firm representing businesses and organizations and individuals in all major areas of civil law, and they have offices throughout Pennsylvania and Maryland. The firm's more than 130 attorneys provide innovative and effective representation in a wide range of areas like banking and business and higher education, trust, estates, real estate, construction, senior living, healthcare, and so much more. You can check them out here in New York at 100 East Market Street. Give them a call at 717-846-8888. They're open 9 to 5 daily. Barley Snyder Law Firm, our presenting sponsor. This hour, however, is presented by AFL. Accountability for Life is committed to preparing and mentoring at-risk adolescents for lifelong success using an athletics-based platform to educate them on oft-forgotten yet very simple fundamental behaviors, concepts, and actions that have the power to define one's course of life. In other words, make them accountable. Accountability for Life. You can find them at aflyorkpa.info. All started by Russ Stoner, head coach in football over at York High. You can give them a call at 717-577-0306 or stop by and see Accountability for Life in action, 755 Vogelsong Road, right here in York. I'm Gary Sutton. Aaron Anderson in with me this morning as well as my co-host. He'll be hosting for me on Monday as I'm going to be out frolicking in Hershey on one of their fields there, known as the Hershey Country Club.
Frolicking.
Yeah,
Frolicking.
Playing golf. Yeah.
You'll be frolicking, and hopefully we won't crash your radio show into the.
If I come back on Tuesday and Daryl says that's it,
That's it,
it's
we're
gone.
done.
Daryl Henry, of course, is our boss, and he can be rugged. He can be rugged. But anyway, Joel Sears joins us this morning. Nobody does it better than Joel Sears when it comes to looking at policy and breaking it down. And I never quite know exactly what he's going to have for us on a Thursday morning. But good morning, Joel. How are you?
Doing well, Gary. Hey, Aaron. How are you?
Joel, it's great to be with you.
So anyway, what do you have for us this morning, my friend? It's not like there's not plenty going on, right? Ever.
Oh, right. Never. Well, I've been tracking days since the 90-day tariff, and we're 70 days in. So that gap closes very rapidly. It's amazing. The first time we had this conversation, it seemed like forever. Now we're 20 days away from the end of the 90-day pause. We're about 9 days into the 50% increase on steel and aluminum. The markets haven't really gone crazy as a result of that. I've been tracking the movement in the major indices since the election and since the inauguration. And they're kind of okay, Gary.
Yeah.
The Dow's down 2% since election, down 2.6 since inauguration. In terms of the overall market dynamic, that's not a big deal. NASDAQ is up 3.3 since election. S&P is up 1.6 since election. Gold is the one that's taken the biggest, or let's say has enjoyed the biggest gain. It's up 9.7 since election and 10.1 since inauguration. So that's the indication, I guess, that people are trying to move assets into something that they think is more tangible, and gold is the beneficiary. But relative to policy and what's going on lately, the word that came to mind was hyperbole, and it comes from all sides. For example, when the riots in Los Angeles are characterized by the president, he makes us think that the entire city is under siege and that everything's burning. Well, it isn't. What is happening is extremely serious, but I'd like to see it framed in a more realistic fashion. The Democrats are just as bad, if not worse, when they talk about ICE fanning the flames of protest by aggressively enforcing the law.
I know Aaron's got a question for you right here.
Yes,
Hey, Joel. So one of the things that I think many of us, Gary and I talk about this often on radio here, is as we look at the national news, and Gary and I have talked about how easy it is to sort of be fatigued by what's going on. In some respects, it's easier just to look the other direction. You know, as we think about this show being the main street of York, you know, I look at this and ask, what impact, you know, when you're looking at what's going on in L.A. and otherwise, but specifically maybe that, as we look at York, Pennsylvania, right here, our own hometown, how do you see this intersecting with what's happening here locally?
I think it's one of those things that finds its way to every city that has the same problems. We're not in the gun sites right now, let's say. But just, you know, as you mentioned that, Jenny and I headed out of town yesterday to go to Lancaster, and as we passed under the Queen Street Bridge, what did we see across the bridge? Signs from the protesters.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exactly the same message that you would see on an overpass in Los Angeles or Chicago, New York City, Boston. It really is everywhere, Aaron. It may not be, at this point, gaining the attention, but it's a national phenomenon. Let's flip this around.
When you look at that, you know, Joel, as a leader here in our community that comes back this direction, and I think you're right. I think we'll begin seeing, I myself have seen people, even all over York County, you know, random spots with signs, things like that. You know, what do you think the impact is going to be locally? You know, I mean, I think we're seeing National Guard and Marines being deployed, you know, out in L.A., and I think Americans get nervous about that. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think they get nervous justifiably, but it's nervous on both sides of the aisle. You know, there's just about every, let's say, service industry that you can name, whether it's in Los Angeles or York, that employs people who are, according to some, newcomers, and according to others, undocumented aliens. Somewhere between those two extremes is a requirement, or at least a stimulus to enforce law. How far do we go? I don't know. Is it legal, for example, for ICE agents to walk into round-the-clock diner some morning unannounced and say, we need to talk to your kitchen staff? Is it okay for them to walk into the meat plants out in the Hanover area and Thomasville area and ask the same question? We're here, we want to just check your employment status. Or go to the apple orchards in Adams County and do the same thing. Those things have got to happen at some point. What's the fallout? I don't know. You know, is it $5 a pound apples? I don't know.
You know what's interesting on that, Joel, is do they have to happen that way? We were talking with Chris Markowski, you know, the Watchdog on Wall Street this morning, a little bit about that, and he said, okay, you take out the bad guys, you take out the people that are the gags, you take out the people that are causing problems in our country, you take out the criminals. But then there's a question mark about the people after that, the people who have been here for a while, who become part of our culture, who have done things here, working here. And again, you can get into a whole argument about undercutting the minimum wage, you can get into all that kind of stuff. And yet at the same time, do we handle them the same way, or do we have to figure out some way to handle the people who are here now that we've shut off the income of people into this country? We've got it down to a trickle, at least to the southwestern border. Now, whether or not we're doing that on visas and everywhere else is another story. But you've shut that off. So now you've corrected the problem of the incoming. Now what do you do with those who have already been here for a while? A lot of people are uncomfortable with that from a human standpoint. And even from an economic standpoint, even though that has not helped our country in one way, and yet people would say, well, it's helped us in other ways because those people are also consumers. So how do you deal with that right now as a culture like the United States? Your thoughts on that?
I think you have to come at it with some compassion, Gary. This has been going on for 35 or 40 years.
I agree with you.
All the way back to the 1986 law that was passed to try to cap or to put an end to this illegal entry by granting amnesty to 3 million undocumented aliens who gained at least, I'll say, a pathway to citizenship. That's another one of those terms that keeps coming up in the hyperbolic column. I don't think most of the folks who are here on economic grounds are looking for citizenship outright. I think they're looking for legal status. Yeah. Citizenship may come later on, but legal status has to come first. And we as a nation need to look at our own behavior. We have laws on the books that have been violated for decades, or let's say not enforced for decades, violated by the perpetrators and unenforced by the justice departments at the national and state levels for decades. That inures the behavior. It makes it normal.
Right.
We can wink all day long, but it's been normalized we're spending billions, if not trillions of dollars to accommodate our unwillingness to enforce our own laws.
And what's happened?
To change the laws.
And what's happened there is we've had Republicans and Democrats alike involved in this. Republicans for maybe cheap labor, Democrats for cheap votes, maybe both for both. I don't know. But at the end of the day, what it has done, it has exacerbated a problem here. And I think we want people in this country, I think, to all have the same rights, whether they're naturalized, whether they're born here, to have the same rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that we all have. And if we have that, then we've got what the United States was supposed to be about: assimilation, the ability to, have the sky as the limit. And right now, if you're an illegal alien in this country, the sky is not the limit. You've got a very tight ceiling above you there, with someone always saying, we're going to deport you, we're going to get rid of you. You're very dependent on other people. You're not independent as many of us are in this country. I don't worry about getting deported every day. I don't worry about walking outside here and worry about ICE coming up and arresting me. I don't have to. But right now, those people do. We need to do something about that that's realistic here in the long run. And Chris said it this morning, too, as you've kind of said, Joel, you can't just say, well, we're going to get rid of everybody. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work that way. If you say, let's deport the bad guys on a regular basis, let's deport those who are causing problems in the country, you got no problem for most people. Where you get into problems is where you have people who are become integral to society and woven into society in some way, shape, or form. Final thoughts this morning from your vantage point.
Well, the last point you made, Gary, is really interesting. They're not just integrally, that's a toughie, integrally woven in.
Right.
Many, for the most part, have acculturated. We're not talking about people that, and for the most part, are bringing a foreign culture and setting up ghettos so that they can preserve their culture while they enjoy the benefits of freedom in the United States. Walk into a typical public school classroom, and Aaron could testify to this. Young kids of, let's say, Spanish-speaking parents who speak perfect English, and 5 or 6 years from now, you will not know that they were not lifelong American citizens.
Right.
They adopt the culture, they speak the language perfectly, they attend our churches and institutions. There has to be something on that end of the spectrum to start moving in a direction that really is more compassionate as well as more practical.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's got to be something else in there that's somewhere between. And it's not negotiating away your principles as a country, but it's coming to grips with a problem that has been here for a long time and maybe has something more than just a polar decision to solve it at the end of the day. Joel, great stuff this morning. Really appreciate you being with us. Thanks as always, my friend. I know we deviated a little bit off from where you were, but I appreciate the conversation and the listening that goes on there and adding to the conversation we're having here on the show. Thank you so much, my friend.
Oh, you're welcome, Gary.
Joel Sears on Policy. Talk to you next Thursday, same time, same place. Joel Sears right here on WOYK. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of this, some of the other things that are happening, and we'll have a Fox Sports update as well, all straight ahead on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. It is the main street of York.
Fox Sports Update.
Still large underdogs in the NBA Finals. The Indiana Pacers lead 2-1. Good morning, I'm Jared Max. The Pacers beat the Thunder in Indianapolis last night, 116-107. Benedict Mathurin came off the bench and scored a team-high 27 points in only 22 minutes against the Thunder.
Ben was amazing getting downhill, not overthinking things. I thought he did a great job operating the pick and roll, just rising up and shooting over guys, getting downhill. He just made play after play. Our whole second group did. Honestly, our second group really won us the game. So shout out to those guys.
The Pacers' Tyrese Halliburton with NBA TV after he scored 22 points in Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Pascal Siakam added 21, while Benedict Mathurin scored 27 for the Pacers. Indiana also got 10 points off the bench from TJ McConnell, 8 from Obi Toppin. The Thunder led by Jalen Williams with 26 points and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who scored 24. The Thunder down 2-1, but still a 1-2 favorite to win the series. Game 4 is tomorrow in Indianapolis. Dallas Mavericks, the latest NBA team to reject the New York Knicks' request to speak with their head coach, Jason Kidd, about the Knicks coaching vacancy. The team fired Tom Thibodeau last week and has sought the likes of NBA head coaches Chris Finch from the Timberwolves and Ime Udoka from the Rockets, as well as former Villanova coach Jay Wright. The Knicks rejected on all fronts. Stanley Cup Final Game 4 tonight in Sunrise, Florida. Reigning Cup champion Panthers have won 2 straight for a 2-1 lead on the Edmonton Oilers, who might make a change in goal tonight. Oilers coach Chris Knobloch said a decision will get made before faceoff whether to start Stuart Skinner, who gave up 5 goals on 23 shots in Game 3, or back up Calvin Pickard. Faceoff 8 o'clock Eastern Time. NHL postseason awards continue to get announced for the second time. Colorado Avalanche defenseman Cale Makar won the Norris Trophy. Golf, the 125th U.S. Open, underway this morning outside of Pittsburgh at Oakmont Country Club. It's Game On with the Fox Sports app, available wherever you download apps. I'm Jared Max.
Get more on the Fox Sports app and foxsports.com.
And by the way, I do want to mention to you about Barley Snyder, our presenting sponsor here. Barley Snyder Attorneys at Law. They're a strategically focused law firm. When I say strategically focused, they have a lot of different areas on which they focus. Yeah, they represent businesses and organizations and individuals in all major areas of civil law. And hopefully a lot of us don't have to come across law, but a lot of times we do through no fault of our own. Civil law, obviously a lot of things come up in the areas of banking or business or creditors' rights, health care, senior living, trusts and estates are one of the areas that they come up the most. Municipal authority. You never think you're going to come across at law on that, right? Litigation and risk management, cybersecurity, employment and employee benefits, ESOP programs. How about hospitality, healthcare? Yeah, it might come up in some of those areas. And they have 130 attorneys plus across a wide area of Pennsylvania and Maryland to take care of those kinds of things for you. And what sets them apart is their clients benefit from having available to them in one law firm the wide range of knowledge and experience represented among all their different practice areas, some of which I mentioned there just a moment ago. They are ready to help you right now. And right here in York, they're located at 100 East Market Street. You can call them today at 717-846-8888 and see if they could represent you in one of the areas that you are involved in right now. Now, they're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but they are ready to help you right now. Barley Snyder, Attorneys at Law. They are the gold standard here for practicing law right here in the York County area, and we are so proud to have them as our presenting sponsor here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. Gary Sutton, Aaron Anderson with you this morning. Aaron's going to be hosting for me this coming Monday. And Aaron, what do we have right now in this hour?
Well, in light of that Barley Snyder, promo there, Gary, there's a couple of things that are newsworthy regarding law. Mm-hmm. Today I read a piece that said that a record number of our congressmen now are over 70 years old. Over 120 congressmen over 70 years old, which is why they suggested that the only thing that they have to actually pass is gas.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I mean, that's borderline offensive.
Well, it's not the place you want to be. It's kind of rough.
Not if somebody's passing gas.
70 or older. Should you have an age limit on congressmen and senators? That's one of the things that people kick around. People talk about term limits all the time, but should you have an age limit?
An age limit
on people? I would not want to have an age limit on doing the show because we would be passing that level right there. You just mentioned the 70. It's not the gas part, but the 70. It's a very small enclosure in here. Yeah, it's not. This would not be pretty here, but Yeah, 70 or older.
That's a lot of people are asking that in a lot of the most recent presidential election. The reality is though, Gary, I look at folks that I know that are 70. Heck, I know folks that are in their mid 80s who are still very sharp, very active. So I
not in this room, but elsewhere.
I would say in this room. I've been on the golf course with you, so I know how sharp your mind is, and we hear that every day. But I struggle with that a good bit, and yet I do recognize that as you do get older, get into those ages, you can have some declines, things slow down. I find myself, I'm approaching 50. My memory at times is not
that's
quite
too
as
bad.
I know.
Yeah.
Just Chase is over here laughing.
Chase is approaching 30 sometime.
I'm not sure. Chase is I don't know how old Chase is.
Chase is pretty sharp.
I'm going to say mid. We're going to go mid-20s.
How old are you, Chase? Come on, fess up.
I will be 22 in a month.
He'll be 22 in October.
He's the spry age. Gary, I have socks that are 22 years old.
Well, he looks at us like he's fairly excited that we're not drooling a lot in here. That you're not walking around with a drool cup. And
I have 3 children that are his age and older.
Do you remember when you were young and you looked at people who were like 60, and you'd say, "Oh my God,
oh my gosh,
how are they even functioning?" Now they say 80 is the new 60. And 70 is the new 50, and 60 is the new 40. You hear that a lot.
I think there's some accuracy to. For one, Gary, I notice. I think older people dress and act younger than they did when I was a kid, and I think that's. Yeah. I think that's very true. I mean, look at your
rose-colored shorts today and a white shirt. I look
fashionable.
I'm tan,
debonair.
I don't know about that, but
debonair,
because I don't know what the word means. But anyway. But the idea is I look around at a lot of the people from my generation, and now I say, oh, well, a lot of those people are in their 70s, but we don't act like that, and we don't look like that.
I'm personally excited by that because as I look at folks who are 70s and 80s and active, I say, that's what I want to be. I want to be active. I'm moving beyond trying to be cool. Now my kids would argue with me, but they should remember Father's Day is coming up.
Right. Yeah. So don't. That's it.
Maybe not this week.
My wife has worked on keeping me cool, but it's like a losing proposition.
No, I think she's doing a pretty good job.
And I try to relate to people, and but it's one of those things. And the moment I forget a word, this is one of the things that happens to me. The moment I forget a word that I want to use in a moment, I go, oh no, Alzheimer's.
Oh, I mean, I'm starting to do the same thing, Gary.
I jump to it and I think to myself, and I treat those very seriously because Alzheimer's was on my father's side of the family. Yeah, right. And so I treat that very seriously. It's not something I joke about ever, or dementia or things like that. I have great sensitivity to those kind of things. But as you go through, and I have a pretty hot schedule, and I like to keep going all the time. But if I forget, and I'll say to my wife, oh no, my wife will go, listen, you're just getting a little bit older. You're going to forget some of those things from time to time. My wife is the voice of reason in our family.
She's the voice of reason.
She does. Now, she said if you're locking your keys in the refrigerator, then you may want to start thinking a little bit about.
We might have to take your keys away if it starts happening.
Exactly. And isn't that what we all worry about? Is we can't become mobile anymore? Yeah. We lose our independence. I mean, that is a very serious thing that I talked to a lot of people about. I had a guy the other week come up and said, listen, the moment I lose my car, the moment I lose my the ability to be mobile is the moment I worry about, we're coming to the end.
The other day, Gary, I was playing basketball in my backyard. My kids were watching, and I was playing against, some middle schoolers, and I was doing pretty well. And I fell down while I was playing. It just a normal thing that happens in basketball, and my kids all jumped up like I was some old decrepit man.
Yeah.
They brought me a walker.
Can you get back up?
Can I get back up? I'm insulted.
I know. When we come back, Dennis Owens joins us, ABC 27 News, as we get into some more of the politics and what people are talking about right now. We've got a deluge coming at us daily. We've got a blizzard of information coming at us daily. And how are we handling that? How are we dealing with that? He'll also give us inside information on the budget and how much closer we might or might not be to having a budget here in the state of Pennsylvania that involves your money, all here on the Gary Sutton Show. It is the Main Street of York. Back with more right after this. This hour brought to you by AFL, Accountability for Life. Russ Stoner started this thing in York, and I'll tell you what, it is really, really a great program because they're helping athletes people who are athletes, and through that athletic approach, learn about accountability, integrity, requiring ownership of one's actions. All good stuff. You can find more about it at aflyorkpa.info to get more about accountability for life, the sponsor of this hour right here on the Gary Sutton Show. Back with Dennis Owens right after this.
Change up, swing and a miss, struck him out. Michael Horrell, his fifth strikeout, and it ends his sixth inning in his season debut. Who needs retirement? Michael Horrell back with a quality start in his season debut tonight.
Michael Horrell was part of the whole run for the Revs last year in their run to the pennant here in the Atlantic League. Well, Michael Horrell was not part of the Revs until yesterday. He came back out of retirement. He was going to retire, and he came back out of retirement yesterday and had a quality start. The Revs won 9-2. They've now stretched their lead in the Northern Division of the Atlantic League by 5 games. They're up to 5 games ahead of Long Island right now with their 13th straight win over Hagerstown yesterday. And Michael Horrell came back to pitch kind of on a moment's notice. and did a great job. Had great stuff yesterday. So the Revs trying to shore up their pitching right now. They've got a couple people who are on the physical disability leave for the moment, if you will. And Michael Harrell coming out yesterday and doing a great job pitching. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show here on WOYK. It's 7:36 on a Thursday morning. Gary Sutton, Aaron Anderson sitting in. Aaron's going to be sitting in for me by himself on Monday. He's going into shell shock over that right now. Not really. He's
shell shock.
Yeah,
shell shock.
He's used to. Yeah, he's over there. He's in the fetal position right now, but no, it's not that bad. Yeah, he's actually handling very, very well, as you would expect. He's CEO of Logos Academy. He's also a pastor at a church. Most importantly, he manages to find a way to talk among the 7 people in his family, or the 8 people in his family, who have a chance to talk, with 6 kids and his wife. And
it's actually 10.
10?
10. I have a child that just got engaged, so soon to be 11. And in July, Gary, grandchild number 1.
Wow.
Wow. Born, so I will be a grandfather.
So your biggest accomplishment is being able to have your voice even heard amidst that whole crew.
Yeah, even heard, respected, revered, honored.
Worshipped.
Not worshipped.
Not worshipped.
Honored.
No.
How about honored?
Worship's another area for you.
Honored, especially this weekend, right?
Yeah, by the way, you've
Father's
put out
Day.
some very subtle hints this morning about what is the perfect Father's Day gift for you this weekend?
Actually, so Father's Day for me is always obviously pastoring. I'm at church. I think a great cookout, being with my family, hanging out together, probably sneak a nap in there somewhere.
Not a hard man about this. You got some simple requests.
Thank you. That is it. If only I could convey this. I mean, a simple man, not many true demands.
Maybe like Dennis Owens. I don't know if Dennis Owens is a simple man, but he's with ABC 27 News. But he's a dad. He's also a coach of his kid. Hey, good morning, Dennis. How are you?
I'm well. Happy Father's Day to that person that you have there in the studio.
That's Aaron Anderson. Aaron Anderson, he's going to be my host here on Monday.
Well, with all that crew, he needs to get a radio show just to be heard, I think.
So you're a dad. Do you have? You're looking forward to Father's Day? I mean, we think about our dads, and then we think about the fact that we're dads now. And so, what are you doing on Father's Day? Do you have any special things your son is doing for you?
Well, I have a daughter, 2 sons.
And you have a daughter.
One son just landed in Italy with a school chaperone trip.
Wow.
Left yesterday, so he's maybe we'll FaceTime with him, and then maybe a little golf with the other son. But no, I actually don't. We don't have a plan at the moment, but something will come up. I'm sure we'll figure something out.
You and I have yet to play golf, by the way. You have to get down here and play some golf with me, and we got to catch up. So I'm gonna make that a priority this week to set a date with you. How's that?
That's perfect.
There it is.
Perfect.
So we will get at that. So in the world of nutsiness right now that we have called politics every day, where we have this deluge of stuff coming at us, we're trying to make sense out of the whole immigration thing. We knew when we said about deportations at the beginning, this was not going to be a Chamber of Commerce exercise. It was not going to be butterflies and balloons and unicorns running around together and saying, oh, let's work it all out. What do you make out of what's happening, for example, in Los Angeles? We got some demonstrations coming up this weekend. President Trump's moving on to other cities with the ICE thing and the enforcement. What, as far as pushing responsibility around, you're hearing Trump being called a bully, and yet you're seeing governors and mayors not necessarily doing their job that well. Is there a truth that you're finding anywhere amidst all of that stuff that's happening at the moment, Dennis? Your thoughts?
Well, it's just not a good look when our largest state and the governor and the federal government are not on the same page. I'll tell you that. That's just an uncomfortable thing to watch. I'm a little squeamish about calling out, federalizing National Guard against the wishes of the home state.
Right.
That's problematic in my view, and I'm not pointing fingers one way or the other. It's just that, that there needs, when it comes to public safety, there needs to be a united front among elected officials. And that there isn't in this instance is really problematic to me. Further, it is a fair point that on January 6th, which a lot of people want to act as if nothing happened. Well, I've interviewed the police, several policemen that were traumatized on that day. Some debilitated, by the way. There was a real slow response to call out any kind of extra help. So, I don't know if there's some. I sense there's some political posturing perhaps on both sides, and I don't think there should be such a thing when it comes to public safety. That's where I'll go.
You just said something that really is important, that the federal government and the state governments are not on the same page. And maybe even the local municipal governments are not on the same page. This idea of sanctuary cities who say, well, we want to take care, we're not going to help ICE, we're not going to hinder them, but we're not going to help them with our law enforcement there. And we carry out law enforcement for our own, and yet they're not really doing that when they allow people to come there who are, in some cases, really bad actors. They've cleared some pretty bad actors out of L.A. who probably we don't want in our country. And yet, by the same token, we also have another chapter in this book called Immigration, where we say, yeah, but we've got these other people who have lived here. They're kind of part of us. We know who they are. They're our neighbors. They live across the street. Or, we see them out working in various jobs. And we're not so sure that we need to move those people out. So there's this gray area in there that no one's quite sure what they want to do with it right now. And that's presenting a big problem, I think, for a lot of people in this conversation about immigration to the country. Your thoughts on that, Dennis?
Well, you're exactly right. So it's not a black and white issue that a lot of people want to make black and white. And
you're right.
So
yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm from Philadelphia. Went to LaSalle College down there, but I graduated high school actually from El Toro, California, and my first job was in Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
Which has lots of migrants. So there's a couple of things. I think most Americans would agree that if someone's in the country not legally and then commits a crime, that there needs to be repercussions, and that may include deporting them, and because they probably shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Right.
But at the same time, I know there was an ebb and a flow from Mexico. I worked in restaurants in Southern California, and working in Bakersfield, as I said, there's lots of growing going on there. There's an ebb and a flow of Mexican folks who are coming up to work. So, and there's lots. I was in school with many of the kids of those, and they're members of the community, as you just said a moment ago, and accepted, and they're not committing crimes. And so to go, quote unquote, round up some of these, are we prepared, by the way, to spend, $42 for a strawberry? Are you prepared? Because a lot of these people are doing the work that a lot of people don't want to do. So where I'm going is there's lots of tentacles on this topic. Right. And, there's some big business people that are like, whoa, that's, farms here in central Pennsylvania, Adams County and Apple farms that rely on migrant work and people who are not from this country to do very, very hard work. And so, again, I didn't give you an answer here. I'm just saying there's lots of levels to it. And the people that immediately want to make it black and white, as the president likes to say, they're all murderers and rapists. Well, that's just not true.
No.
I've met them. But then for the other side to say, if you're in here illegally, that how dare law enforcement come after them? Well, wait a minute, they're here not legally. So both sides, when the black and white, as we often, the theme of our conversations on Thursdays are typically the extremes are wrong on both sides, and somewhere in the middle, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Gary, here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Here's the thought. You've stopped the influx of people coming in the country pretty much at the southwestern border. Now, again, I don't know what the score is for people who overstay visas in this country, which accounts for 2/3 of the people who've been in this country illegally. I don't know where that's at. I'm assuming that's down, but I don't like to assume. I like to make sure I have facts in front of me. However, let's assume that the equation here is, okay, first of all, stop the flow of people into the country, which we've kind of done. Now you say, okay, let's deal with the components that we have. The components are, we got some really bad people, and you've talked about that already, that are the murderers and the rapists. There are some of those people. There are the gang members. There's Tren Duagwa. There's MS-13. There's those kind of groups. Do we want them in our country? No, we don't. Let's get them out of here. Let's get them somewhere else. Then we come to people who've come here, like many of us probably would want to do if we were in other countries, that I'd love to come to the United States and start here. Some of them came here illegally over the years. Some of them have become intertwined with our culture in a lot of different ways. And we say, what do we do with those people now? Can we come up with a program where we integrate them that's going to make more sense than trying to deport all those people out of the country? Because I think ultimately, to me, the goal is let's get everybody to have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that we all have, that we can share. Where I don't want someone being in the country here that the highest they can aspire to be is a busboy at a diner or a worker in a field. I don't think that's what we want. Is it, Dennis?
No, but I also don't want 7 ICE agents screeching to a halt to grab one woman who's a student at Harvard, or Columbia, or Penn, or wherever they were. And oh, by the way, and this is an old Tom Friedman thing. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom Friedman.
I was, yeah. Wrote for the Times.
We ought to be encouraged. The people that are coming from around the world that are accepted to Harvard and Penn and Columbia and Yale, and those are the people, not only should we be encouraging them to come, we ought to be handing them green cards upon graduation to stay and become the best and the brightest and get big jobs and pay big taxes. Those are the people you absolutely want to have here. So there seems to be an assault on intellectualism going on as well, which is a little troubling.
Well, and we need to make sure, in other words, these things have some nuances to them that aren't covered by the headlines of it's black or white or it's legal or illegal, that because we've created the problem over the years by our interaction, by the way we've handled things, a whole lot of other things involved in. There's a little bit more to the whole body of information here than just the black or white or the headlines that we seem to get every day that both sides like to kind of wave around and say Trump's a bully or, all people are rapists and murderers. It's not that. There's somewhere in between, and we need to get back to some of those nuances. Final thoughts this morning, my friend.
Well, I completely agree, and I think you talk to most Democrats, and hey, look, John Fetterman. Once again, John Fetterman's kind of the voice of reason, although many in his party don't like it. But the fact is, for 3.5 years under Joe Biden, the Democrats ignored what was going on in the southern border. We can all be outraged. I don't care what party you are, that there are Americans on the southwest border that are saying there are people running across my property and into this country, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Right.
So now this is the somewhat to a degree the reaction to that. Now it's swung back the other way. But again, a van with 6, federal agents to grabbing one woman who's a college student is ridiculous. And the other thing is, I want to know what the cost of all this is.
Yeah.
Who's paying all those people that are running around with? What's the price tag? And people have a right to know that as well.
And a lot of questions to be answered. We'll try to answer a few more of them next week. They won't all be cleared off the table by then, Dennis, I don't think. Okay, my friend?
Happy Father's Day to you.
Happy Father's Day to you, my friend. And we look forward to talking next week. Always appreciate our conversations. Thanks so much. And I will make that a priority this week to get a tea time with you.
Yes.
And then I can say I got a tea time with my friend Dennis Owens finally after all these years. We'll look forward to it. All right, buddy. Take care. Thanks. Dennis Owens here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. When we come back, we'll take a look at the U.S. Open. It's underway right now. By the way, Rory McIlroy admitted to shooting an 81 in a practice round at the U.S. Open. An 81, which is unheard of. And Scottie Scheffler, who is the number one golfer in the world right now by far, just won the PGA, says Oakmont is the hardest course we will play, period. He tees off today at 125. We'll take a break. We'll come back with more here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. This hour has been brought to you by Accountability for Life. They're committed to preparing and mentoring at-risk adolescents for lifelong success, and they use an athletics-based approach. They do a lot with football. Russ Stoner, head football coach over York High, is the guy that started this program. Yes, it doesn't have an E on the end. They provide coaches and educators and other community-based partners with a character-building resource toolkit aimed at promoting the importance of accountability in all areas of a student-athlete's life by teaching and modeling the concept of integrity and requiring ownership of one's actions. Isn't that what we want from kids? You can find them at www.aflyorkpa.info. They're doing some great work over there. You can stop by and see them at 755 Vogelsong Road at Accountability for Life. They have their own building. And Coach Russ Stoner, give them a call, 717-577-0306. Find out more about Accountability for Life. Gary Sutton, Aaron Anderson in this morning. Aaron will be hosting for me on Monday morning, so we're practicing a little bit this morning on a lot of what we want to do. But Aaron, you found an interesting story this morning locally here in Pennsylvania that might affect a whole lot of people in the long run.
Yeah, this is one that people have been talking about for a long time in Pennsylvania is the minimum wage. But I said a piece in York Daily Record that says that the minimum wage hike clears the PA House, but even supporters say it's not ideal. And Gary, what it says is that on June 11th, there was a plan approved that would use a regional approach to establish a base pay of $15 an hour in some communities, but less in certain rural areas. And I want to say what our friend Representative Kate Klunk mentioned, that some golf courses straddle York and Adams County that would have different rates for different workers. What do you think about that, a regional approach that pays different rates? I think they said $12 an hour in some communities would be. So you'd have different rates across the state.
Here's the problem that you have with the minimum wage. And I'd like to continue to work toward the maximum wage, which is what we've been talking about this morning. I'd like to continue working where everybody has a chance to have a maximum wage. Right now, a minimum wage, what that does, and the problem that you have, and part of this has to do with illegal aliens coming into the country, part of it has to do with the way we view people coming into the country, is we're trying to make a living off of minimum wage. And to me, that's a problem. To me, the minimum wage, if I had a minimum wage, theoretically and philosophically, I'm going to answer the question first, it would be zero, okay? Because I would say, all right, this guy over here, he's paying me $5 an hour. This guy over here is paying $10 an hour for the same work. Who do I want to apply to go work for? I'm going to go work for the guy that can afford $10 an hour, okay? Now, when you put the minimum wage on there for small businessmen and for golf courses, for example, which aren't making money anyway in most cases, the only people that are making money on golf courses right now are places that have construction contracts with them where they're able to overcome the loss in golf with what they're making in houses. Or if you're a destination golf course, let's say in Myrtle Beach, where you're going there and visiting and playing golf, they're making money. Okay, so they can afford to pay a lot more. But the problem that you have with the minimum wage, you're telling someone you've got to pay a certain amount now to someone, $15 an hour, $12 an hour. I don't think the federal government should be involved in that, or the state government. But if you're asking me, do I think it's a good idea to adapt to where you are? Yeah, but that's the whole idea of what we're doing on jobs around the country. For example, a minimum wage of $15 an hour at a course in New York City. You might as well say, well, I can't even afford a cup of coffee with that. Okay, so adapting to a region makes more sense to me. If you agree with the idea of minimum wage, it makes more sense to me, depending on what your area is doing. For example, in York City, or in York County right here, if you go out to the western side of York County, up Route 30 West, let me check Route 74 West, and you go up there, the median wage about 5 years ago was $36,000 for a family of four. You come to the east side, the median wage for a family of four is like $76,000. So guess what? If I said the minimum wage out on the west side of town is this compared to the minimum wage out on the east side of town, it's entirely different. So it does have a regional wage does have some applicability here if you believe in the idea of minimum wage. I'm not a big fan of minimum wage, as you can probably tell, but things are different in different parts of the county. Even as close as East and West York in terms of what we have going on. I don't know if that really answers the question.
I think it does. I feel like we got you more excited just because we started talking about golf courses and what impact it would have on your.
I always get excited about
on your golf. Well, the bill heads to it was a party line vote, 102-101.
Not surprising.
The bill heads to the GOP-controlled Senate for consideration, which I'm guessing it means that's probably dead on arrival in the Senate.
Wouldn't it be interesting if you had not party line votes? If you had people coming in saying, that's a pretty good idea, or it's not a pretty good idea. Just go down the line and say, a whole lot of us sat down together as Democrats and Republicans. We talked about it. This idea sucks. Or this idea is really good. I'd love to see some of that instead of this party line. What does party line tell you? No one's thinking outside the box. No one's thinking outside of what you and I just talked about of why it's a good or a bad idea, or maybe needs some more meat on the bone. I'm just saying. Well, coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, as I said, Aaron's going to be sitting in for me as my sit-in host and really just being Aaron Anderson on Monday morning. And he and I are going to talk about some of the issues today, and we'll take some of your texts at 833-478-4729. Don't forget also, if you miss any part of the show today, you can watch it on YouTube. Just go to WOYK and you will see, or actually be able to listen to, all the things that we talked about here today. You can also check out my other thing. It's just a voice on Main Street, my other podcast, which I do with individuals. I haven't done one with Aaron yet. I'm going to have to get him on the schedule for that. But you can watch that also. It's a 30 to 35-minute back and forth that I do with different people who are movers and shakers around the York area. And you can see that by going to Just a Voice on Main Street. Thanks to AFL, Accountability for Life, for sponsoring this hour. And coming up in the final hour, it'll be Augie's Joint. And we'll tell you about stopping by there as well. But Aaron Anderson and I, straight ahead here, talking about the issues of the day and all the news that's coming at you right here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOIK. It's the Main Street of York. It's 8 o'clock.
York's only local show is back on its new home on York's only local station.
Guess who's back again?
This is the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK.
I'm back.
Now, broadcasting live from WOYK's downtown York studios inside Wellspan Park, here's Gary Sutton.
And welcome back to the final hour of the Gary Sutton Show here on WOYK on a Thursday morning. It is June the 12th, 2025. It's 70 degrees already out in Brooks Robinson Plaza. The sun coming up over the horizon. The cars moving into the city now. The city waking up in the morning. And all is well here at Wellspan Park as we enter our final hour today. Gary Sutton, Aaron Anderson in with us this morning. He and I are going to co-host the final hour here because he's going to be hosting for me Monday morning when I'm going to be plotting the pastures of Hershey Country Club. Playing in a little tournament that morning for UPMC. And looking forward to doing that. As I always look forward to a round of golf every day. But this hour being brought to you, or this show being brought to you by our presenting sponsor, which is Barley Snyder Law Firm. Innovative legal solutions for your business. They're a law firm for today's business world. We have a branch of that located right here in New York at 100 East Market Street. You can give them a call today at 717-846-8888. They're open 9 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the proud sponsors here of the Gary Sutton Show. By the way, we had our lawyer minute on Tuesday, and for some reason on our podcast that day, it came up as gibberish that afternoon. And it happens every now and then in this world of IT, but it came up as gibberish on our podcast. So those of you who try to hear the replay of our lawyer minute that day didn't hear it clearly. And we apologize for that. It was just one of those things that happens, a little mistake. And we normally have our podcast every day. You can listen to us again at WOYK on YouTube. That's all you have to put in, WOYK on YouTube. And then put in the date, and you'll see what's there. You can also listen to us if you're out of the area. You have the new WOYK app. You can get that downloaded onto your phone. Or you can go to 989WOYK.com. And you can also hear us very clearly that way. This hour, by the way, this 8 o'clock hour today on Thursday, brought to you by Augie's Joint. You go up to the Central Market. Aaron and I do all the time.
Yes.
And Augie's Joint is right inside the Beaver Street door there, right next to the Bison Farm. And Augie's Joint has got the best sandwiches you're going to find just about anywhere. That's exactly right. They've got great sandwiches like the Augie's Doggy. Now, they got the 4.5 or the 6.5. They have dog sauce, house onions, mustard, and cheese. And I'm telling you what, one of the best chili dogs you will find anywhere. I think it's fantastic, and you'll love it up there. You can also ask about the Augie's cheesesteak, the angry cheesesteak. Oh, yeah, they've got all that. They've got all kinds of wonderful classic cheesesteaks, great burgers. You talk about it, Augie's has got it. Augie's makes it the best. I tell you what, Brent and Jewel, who run that place, know what they're doing with the Augie's sandwiches. And they're open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. Just stop in there and tell them Gary Sutton proudly sent you to Augie's Joint. They are the proud sponsors of this hour here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. But Aaron Anderson with us this morning, who is the CEO of Logos Academy. He is the lead pastor at Living Word Church, and he is the father of 6, husband of 1, and that's his main job, by the way. And he's now he adds to that now as a host of the Gary Sutton Show Monday morning. You're looking very cool about this. You don't look like it's really that awesome.
Internally, you may sea of glass on the outside, turmoil and tempest on the inside.
Really.
You know, filling. How does one fill Gary Sutton's shoes? Chase.
Oh, stop.
How does one fill Gary?
You know, it's listen.
Golden Mic.
No,
golden mic here at WOYK.
Chase is not odd at all, and Chase hasn't even turned 22 yet. I mean, Chase is looking at me, and he's kind of amazed that I walk right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. I don't fall down. I'm pretty sure he feels that way.
I mean, he has one hand tied behind his back over here, running the studio.
Exactly. And he's also, by the way, he's also one of the on-field hosts here for all the various things that happen between innings during the Revs games, which he'll be doing, I guess, this weekend. And he's very good.
Man
very
of many talents.
Many talents.
You said gibberish.
As are you.
You said gibberish. That's what my wife would probably say, that some of our conversations are, what I have to say is gibberish.
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of conversations to be had in this day and age here in the country. And, it seems, here's the thing to start with this morning. Do we have information fatigue right now? And some would say, hand in hand with that, some would say, well, what you're really saying is Trump fatigue. And to some degree, President Trump has come in as president now over these last, January, February, March, April, May, June, now 6 months.
6 months.
And he came in at the same time we came in. We actually were 6 days in front of him. So, some people might say, well, our show is maybe information fatigue. I don't know. We have a lot of different information here. But President Trump came in on January 20th, and he said, here are the things I'm going to do. Now, to his credit, he is going about doing everything that he said he was going to do. Has it worn us out? And I'm not asking this in a negative way. I'm just saying, has it worn us out? A lot of people say, well, President Biden was in and we didn't have stuff going on every day, but now we do. In every different area of our life. What do you think, Aaron? Has it been information, i.e., President Trump fatigue, in the sense of we got so much stuff going on, we can't really focus on an area, and maybe there's too much? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there is a level of fatigue. I don't know that I'd exclusively blame it on President Trump. I do think he has a particular way of stirring the pot that is very unique among U.S. presidents. But when you think of information overload, that I think we've been experiencing for a long time. You think about how much news is coming at us. It's it's a substantial amount of information constantly. I think in some respects it's part of what we've been talking about. There's a book I read recently called The Anxious Generation about the next generation and their struggle with anxiety. I think part of it is there's just a deluge of information, and what I feel, Gary, as a guy who's 49, is a sense of feeling a little powerless, fatigued, and a little powerless. Which is why I keep saying I go back to the local, because I sort of can manage that world as much as I can.
And I'm in the same place, and yet I'm aware of this every day. I remember my mom was alive, and 6 years ago, and she would watch the news every day.
Yeah.
To the point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
She wanted to change the world. My mother was always a person that wanted to change the world. She was kind of an activist mentality, and she wanted things to be thus and so. And one of the things that she said to me a couple of times, she said, I wish, when President Trump was in the first time, we would talk about that. And she said, I wish he would change how he does things. I wish he would be a little bit nicer. I said, Mom, the guy has operated this way his whole life. He's a billionaire. Why would he change? He's used to being in charge. He's used to having 18 million things going on at one time. He's suing or being sued by everybody. That's his life. Now, unfortunately, and President Trump seems to be able to handle that pretty well. I don't know how he does it. He doesn't sleep but 3 hours a day. The guy is tweeting or writing on Truth Social all the time. He seems to troll a lot of things. He reads a lot of stuff. He puts comments in on things. I don't know how the guy does it. It's incredible. The problem is most of us can't. Most of us don't work that way. And so what he has done, in essence, and again, I'm not being critical, I'm just critiquing this by saying what he's done is he's brought that to the country and said, you're going to operate on a daily basis the way I operate on a daily basis. And when you think about it that way, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. And, I just say as a leader and as other leaders that I talk to, you can't really keep up with it. I think as a pastor, or as a school leader, I've had people, Gary, pressure me to say, are you going to respond to this? Are you going to respond to that? And sometimes I don't even myself know what is actual news and what's actually happened, or what's a political strategy to get something done. Because it's very clear to me President Trump uses a strategy of throw something out that's really audacious, get people to react, And then it's kind of like what we're watching with the tariffs now. Where's the landing ground? What's the real news?
And then we'll get around to reasonable discussion on
it. Yeah, and it's hard to even, as a normal person, to even engage. And also, you and I, like, we don't have access to the information of what's actually happening behind the scenes. And that's what makes it so frustrating to follow.
And because he is a guy who's used to making deals in his life. And that's what he does. He leverages, he negotiates, he makes deals, he throws out the top end, he eventually comes to a middle somewhere or somewhere where people are comfortable. That's what he does. And does he bully along the way? I think he does. I think that's part of what he does because he is Donald Trump. He carries that with him. When they write books about this guy years from now, it's going to be unique. I mean, he is probably as unique a guy that we have had in the presidency as ever has happened. I think that's probably could be said.
Yeah. And I would say even Gary, his supporters, even the people that I've found are his most ardent supporters, wish he would dial back the personal attacks and the insults and the things you see on Truth Social. You know, they would say, we agree with his policies, but we wish he'd dial back the attacks. That I do find I find difficult to stomach is the kind of the personal stuff. Because you and I have talked about this a ton. We can agree to disagree. We can have heated, fierce discussions, good discussions. But you and I are not going to come down to a place where we're calling each other names and taking dirty personal attacks.
When you do that, I think at least in York County, in our area, central Pennsylvania, when you walk into a room, you are aware of the people in the room. You're aware of what's going to be an awkward moment. You're aware of what's not going to be an awkward moment. You maybe. And for me, when I try to talk to people every day, I try to think about how will people hear what I have to say and how will I hear what they have to say? And the way to come into me and say, well, you're thus and so. You're this, you're that, you're a miserable whatever. I've just shut my ears to you because now you basically don't want to have a conversation with me. You want to have a drive-by verbal shooting. You know, you're taking a shot at me and then riding on out of town. That's not going to get my attention. We have a guy that trolls our Facebook page all the time.
Is that me?
And not you.
It's not me.
Not you. No.
All right.
No. Is it me? No. No, it's not. But the guy, I look at it and I think, oh, I really don't have respect because he's always trying to be the wittiest guy in the room in a negative way. I don't find that to be something good. I don't find it when a bully's in the room. I don't respond well to that. I don't listen well to people who are always negative on someone and can't hear anything positive about anything they're doing. So when someone's all something all the time, I don't do that. Now, if someone comes in and says, by the way, you mentioned something a moment ago. Tell me more about how you arrived at that.
Right.
Now you've got my attention. Now this person wants to hear. And then I might come back and say, by the way, how did you get around to where you came to? That's all part of it. One of the things that we're debating a lot this week right now that's been in the news has been what's happening in Los Angeles. We're all watching that carefully as President Trump trying to carry his deportation stuff a little bit further with ICE agents arresting the bad guys there. But now they're saying, what about the other people? What is peaceful protest? What isn't peaceful protest? What should the local authorities be doing in the city? What should the governor be doing? Is President Trump right in bringing out the Marines and other people? Well, we've got other cities that are going to join in the No Kings nationwide anti-Trump rally. And one of the places it's going to be happening is right here in New York. We're going to talk about that next here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK with Aaron Anderson. It's 8:18 on a Thursday morning.
Swinging a bouncing ball to short. Whaler hustles to it, gloves it. He fires, and this game's over. Revs with a 9-2 stomping of the Boxcars here tonight. They've done it again. Michael Horrell wins his season debut. Mr. Horrell, right out of the classroom, right back onto the mound. And he was excellent tonight. And the offense with another huge night.
Michael Horrell, who was part of the big pennant-winning Revs run last year, comes back to the Revs after a short retirement. He is now part of the pitching staff and stepped in yesterday, had a wonderful pitching performance, and the Revs winning at 9-2. They are now in first place by 5 games over the Long Island Ducks, as Gastonia will be coming in this weekend, by the way, here to Wellspan Park, where we are broadcasting from right now. And Darrell Henry with word last night about the 13th straight win that the Revs had over Hagerstown. The Flying Boxcars were, the brakes were put on them, frankly. Anyway, so they have another game coming up tonight. That'll be at 6:30. Airtime for Darrell for the final game of this series will be 6:10 tonight. They've already won the series. They're looking for another sweep over the Boxcars. That would be 14 in a row over the Boxcars and would be a new record, I believe, for number of consecutive wins over one team. Gary Sutton, Aaron Anderson with you this morning. Aaron's going to be sitting in for me on Monday morning, and also some other dates coming up in the future when I actually take a few days off. But anyway, several rallies are planned on Flag Day in South Central Pennsylvania, including York and Gettysburg, as part of a nationwide No Kings protest. Now, if you're not aware of it, the president has his birthday coming up on Saturday, but he also has a military parade going through Washington, D.C., which I frankly am not really in favor of. I don't think we need that. I think it's a waste of money and time, especially in the Doge era where we're kind of cut down on a lot of the waste. But that's what the president has planned. He said that's what he's going to do. And it's coming up this weekend. He says he's all in favor of peaceful protests, but if people are there for the purpose of trying to stir things up, have violent protests, that will be met with equal put down. What do you think about these rallies that are planned here in York, by the way? The No Kings rally, obviously, they're seeing President Trump as a king. Gettysburg, it'll be noon to 2 on Saturday in Lincoln Square. Harrisburg, 5 to 7 Saturday in South Riverfront Park. Lancaster, 11 a.m. to noon on Saturday in Binns Park. And then right here at York, 10 a.m. to 12 noon in Continental Square. What are your thoughts about that, Aaron?
Well, you know, I last summer I went with my family to a country that's actually a communist country.
Okay. And
if you were to criticize or to protest the government, you know exactly what would happen there. You will land in some prison and maybe not be alive. So I will say, Gary, one of the things I love about our country, I mean, we have a wonderful system of laws and constitution. So what a privilege it is to be able to criticize your government. I mean, yet we have laws that govern that, and so it's also important that we do this in a way that's orderly according to law. You know, I think those protests are great because that just gives us the ability as citizens to protest and say something, to oppose something we don't like. I think what all of us, and I would say, Gary, even through the years and all the things I've been involved in, I don't think people want to see protests turn violent. Certainly rioting, burning buildings, cars, things like that. I've yet to meet somebody who, maybe one person I met who would advocate that that's a legitimate form, but one out of significant number of people I've talked to. So I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It makes me a little nervous. I don't love seeing the military paraded out, in American streets. I think, and yet, I mean, we really have. These are complex issues.
Yeah. Organizers, by the way, are committed to nonviolent acts, they say, about these local protests, and participants are expected to de-escalate any potential confrontations, the website states. I was interested in what they said. This was in an article in the New York Daily Record today. They said the nationwide protest will be held on June 14th as President Donald Trump and the U.S. Army plan to have a big military parade in Washington, D.C. Trump's birthday is on Flag Day, and the U.S. Army will celebrate its 250th anniversary that day as well. Here's what it said from this group that's organized it, though, and this really raises another question for me. They said, quote, No Kings, the protest, is a nationwide day of defiance. From city blocks to small towns, from courthouse steps to community parks, we're taking action to reject authoritarianism. And then this, and show the world what democracy really looks like, the website states. So my question is, what does democracy really look like right now? How do these people see democracy? What is it supposed to be? They're saying, okay, we're having a day of defiance. What are we defying? What is the authoritarianism? And you mentioned a moment ago, one of the things you say is maybe you're not really in love with the idea of putting 700 Marines on the streets of L.A. to down this thing. National Guard, that's one thing, but Marines, something else, because that looks like putting down a war kind of situation in a country. What are your thoughts on that? What are they defying?
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of times in my recollection, at least in my lifetime, Gary, where we've seen the U.S. military out on streets, policing, and arresting, potentially arresting or holding people. So I go back to, I think this is a really complex situation when you have laws, when you have local police departments and local officials who you may not choose to enforce those laws. It's really, I would love to see it not escalate to this point. Gary, one of the things is I think the topic that we've been talking about is it always feels like we're forced to these crazy dichotomies. Like we have to either choose between law keeping or we have to choose between compassion. In an earlier segment, you actually suggested, on the topic of immigration, and maybe it was Joel Sears that suggested, that there could be a third way or other ways to thinking about how to approach these topics. And that is what I think people are so hungry for, is to find, is there a way to find a mediating ground, not just so we can be moderate, but where we can have dialogue and land on some solutions that actually are very different ways to actually move us forward.
You just hit it. Want to find solutions. And people say, well, if you're moderate, you don't believe in anything. And there's some truth to that, maybe. On the other hand, I think a lot of times those people get tarred unfairly and feathered unfairly in the sense of maybe you're just trying to find a solution. Maybe you're hungry and thirsty for a situation where everybody can win instead of one side wins and one side has to lose.
Right.
That's politics to me.
Yeah, I disdain the idea that to moderate or to find pragmatic solutions is somehow wishy-washy. Just the other day, Gary, my 12-year-old son, my 14-year-old, they both got great grades on the report cards. So their mom and I said, we're going to take you out to go to go out to eat. Well, of course, they had two different opinions about where they wanted to go, and they couldn't come to an agreement. I said, here's what I did. I said, I'm going to leave the room. You guys are going to come to a conclusion, agree to something. Otherwise, we don't do anything. And lo and behold, I left the room. I came back. Guess what? They had an agreed upon solution. It's amazing. They were able to dialogue and come to some resolution.
So you set up hey, here's what's going to have to happen.
Yes,
you gave them a deadline,
Yep.
and they met it. So it wasn't moderate by any way.
It wasn't moderate.
It was, here's what's going to happen. Either you're going to do something or you're not going to do anything. There it is. And so being moderate and finding a solution isn't being wishy-washy. When we come back, we're going to tell you a little bit about the osprey here in York County and what they might do with that nest that's up there between two power lines. And we've got a lot more to talk about here on the Gary Sutton Show. Aaron Anderson will be sitting in for me on Monday. This morning, he and I are kind of co-hosting to get kind of used to it. All here on the Gary Sutton Show. It is the main street of York, and it's sponsored this hour by the Augie's Joint. Augie's Joint right there at Central Market. If you have not stopped out there yet and got a burger or a hot dog or a sandwich or one of his special sandwiches that he has daily, then you are missing out. Augie's Joint is located there in Central Market on the Beaver Street side. You can come right in that door and you'll see it right there as you step inside the door. They're open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And they've got some of the best sandwiches anywhere, including my favorite, the Augie's Doggy. Yeah, which is a chili dog. Dog sauce, house onions, mustard, and cheese. Ladies and gentlemen, once you've had that, you're ready to go up. Okay? It's all right there. Augie's Joint, the proud sponsor of this hour on the Gary Sutton Show. Back with more on news right after this with Aaron and I on the Gary Sutton Show. It is the main street of York. It's 8:30. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK. Who in the heck is this? Oh, come on. Who is it? Who is it, Aaron?
Van Halen.
Van Halen.
Oh, Van Halen.
With Panama.
Well, I don't
Oh,
know.
come on,
I mean,
Gary.
I wasn't a Van Halen guy.
Van Halen.
You know what? My extent of Van Halen is Jump. I mean, that's about what I know. You better
Classic, great rock. Right
I know.
there.
I'm not a great classic rock guy.
Oh,
By the way, one of the stories that we talked about this week, and some people were asking about this the other day, what are they doing with the osprey? There's an osprey family that's in a dangerous nest down at Lake Redmond, and they're being assisted by Med-Ed and the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And if you see the picture of this thing, this osprey built a nest on top of a tight turn of Med-Ed power lines next to the roaring trucks of Route 83 along a township road that bisects Lake Redmond. This osprey family decided it was a perfect location to set up housekeeping, right? And however, it's not ideal because of the danger of the protected species from the live power lines and the potential creating a power outage. So what they did is, and this according to State Game Warden Ray Madden in the article I was reading, who monitored the operation, they built a high perch above Lake Redmond right next to it. Now, why do they have a high perch? Well, it's a perfect fish buffet for ospreys who are raising a chick. They can go down and get fish out of Lake Redmond. So what they did, and the fact is the osprey do not produce a lot of eggs. So using a cell phone camera and the utilities lift, the crew determined that the nest has one egg in it right now. So they don't want to mess with the nest at the moment because it's sitting there. But right between these power lines, I'm looking at this thing, I'm saying, good grief, this thing looks dangerous. However, what they have done is they built a perch up there next to it. And they basically said, okay, we're going to put that in there. And the problem is the osprey is not going to move his nest right now. And so they're saying, well, come, I guess, like October, once they vacate it, once the chick grows and they vacate the nest and they get it out of there and so forth, then they're going to move the nest over to this new perch during that time. And that way it'll be there when they come back next year. But when you look at the picture of this thing, I mean, it's sitting up high above there. It's next to 83. It's on that little road that goes underneath right there. And you can see the osprey nest sitting up there. And they built this perch next to it. They're going to try to move it when it comes October. We have one of those out at Regis Glen where I play golf above the 18th hole, an eagle's nest. They come back every year. They have a chicken there right now who waves its wings every day. You haven't lived, and you play golf, Aaron. You haven't lived till you've putted down there and you feel the eagle's eyes on you.
Eagle's eyes.
Oh my gosh! I'll tell you what, you can feel the staring down there, and it is rough. But anyway,
have you ever shot an eagle on that hole? I mean, by shot, I mean, hole. Just to be clear, golf, not shooting the bird.
You're just shoot an eagle? Aaron, what kind of person are you? No, he meant there's in golf, there's a term eagle, 2 under par for a hole. I played with a guy that had an eagle yesterday. It was a hole-in-one. Scott Nouse had a 9 iron that he hit on number 3 and knocked in the hole for a hole-in-one. And, so he had an eagle yesterday. I've had eagles on holes. I've even had an albatross in a hole. An albatross is a 2 on a par 5, which I had in our 16th hole one day. I knocked a driver in off the fairway and went in for a 2. But I didn't shoot it. I almost got you in trouble. Yeah. Either myself or you in trouble. Don't include me in your recklessness there. I was.
This is what you're turning over on Monday.
That's exactly right. Now I'm worried to death.
You should be.
Yeah. Anyway, Kane Highland's grandmother was seeking justice for her grandson. On Tuesday, she believes she got it. At 1:17 Tuesday, the jury in the Nolan Grove homicide trial, remember that one, was delivering its verdict, convicting the 15-year-old of killing his 12-year-old friend, Kane Highland. That was in Red Lion some years ago. Kane's grandmother, Linda Arvin, was in Longs Park with Kane's brothers. It was a sunny afternoon. The boys, Jaden, 12, Brantley, 7, and Remington, 6, were goofing around the park doing what boys do, digging in dirt, playing in the swings, wrestling and laughing, just having a good time. And it was talking about how the verdict came down on Monday. The prosecutor cross-examined Nolan. The lawyers delivered their closing argument, and the judge handed the case off to a jury. She decided to skip the trial, spent the day with her grandsons, going to a hands-on science museum, and they're saying at 1:17 she got a text from a friend. Guilty, she screamed. Yeah, finally. She had been waiting for 2 years, 2 months, and 9 days for that message. She had desired justice for Kane. She felt like she got it. Arvin, 59, sat in the living room of her house south of Red Lion, about 4 miles away from the site of Cain's death. A breezeway between the two buildings in the first block of First Avenue. It goes on. This is writing the whole article about it. And at 8:22, April 1st, 2023, in that dark breezeway, Nolan, armed with his father's .380 semi-automatic pistol, joked about Cain's mother, according to testimony during the trial from Cain's friend Miles Bellman, who was present in the breezeway. Cain told Nolan to shut up. Nolan responded, "You know what happens?" and shot Cain in the back, the bullet severing Cain's spinal cord and piercing his heart, killing him nearly instantly. Nolan was 13 at the time, was charged as an adult, and after a 7-day-long trial, was convicted of third-degree murder and other charges. The jury was out for about 5 hours. He faces 20 to 40 years in state prison. Arvin said she had faith the jury would do the right thing. Your thoughts on this trial and this case, Aaron? It's sad, no matter what came out of this, but it's very sad. You have a juvenile here that faces 20 to 40 years in prison, third-degree murder. Your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I just say as a dad, first of all, and then thinking as a school leader, yeah, heartbreaking. You know, the reality is, you know, middle school kids, Gary, you know, you were a teacher,
right?
Middle school kids, like, they're not thinking about consequences, but there are consequences. And in this case, you know, how on earth, you know, how the young man got a hold of a gun and had it. It's the worst of worst scenarios. And I mean, I love middle schoolers. I love middle school boys. I remember being one. Your brains aren't fully developed. You do dumb things, and some of the dumb things we do have more lasting consequences. I think it's a sad day. You know, loss of life, obviously, but also just thinking about a young man who's going to spend a long time in prison.
You know, I was thinking back to when I was a kid, when I saw this verdict, and like you know, I was dragging my knuckles around. I didn't know a whole lot of things, but here's the one thing I did know. My parents taught me, and we played with a lot of guns when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Play guns. You know, I had the double holster. I had the combat gun. I had the helmet. I had all that stuff. But the one thing that our parents taught us was you don't point guns at people, and play is not the same as real. And my father made that very plain, and my mother made that very plain to me. And I'm not sure sometimes that's made as plain, or maybe it's exacerbated by a visual world where we see a lot of stuff and people shooting guns in a video game or whatever it might be. And I'm not putting a finger on the video game. I just had to be an example. Where it's blurred. It's kind of blurred a little bit. Do you see that as an educator, as a dad?
I think you could make a case. I mean, there's a lot more violence that I think young people encounter on video games and on TV. At the same time, I grew up around a lot of the same stuff, Gary. I grew up in a house with guns. My dad was a gun guy. My dad sat us down, and we knew you don't ever touch one of these guns without me being around. I mean, there were very strict guidelines. I mean, really a handful of times we went out and shot, and I kind of developed a healthy respect and fear of guns, and so. But even as a middle schooler, I knew they were dangerous, and you absolutely never point them toward people. So I don't know that this is a case where I don't know all the details about this young man and what was going on with him. I would say most of the middle schoolers I know, even the ones that are dragging their uncles, know that you point a gun and you shoot it is going to have some serious consequences.
We were talking about accountability for life being one of our sponsors this morning. Yes. I was thinking about, here's a kid that's going to have accountability for his whole life for what he did. Because, that gun doesn't know the age of the person pulling the trigger. It just doesn't. And somewhere along the line, someone dropped the ball. Something dropped the ball. Something happened that the ball was dropped. Whatever it was, and again, not knowing all the particulars of this kid's family situation or anything else, I'm not putting a finger on anybody, but I'm saying at some point in time, the ball was dropped in this kid's education where he was allowed to blur it and say, hey, playtime, right? You know what happens. When he said, you know what happens to the kid he shot, and then he goes and pops him and kills him instantly, that's not going to do well. And so he now no longer gets off as a juvenile. He now is treated as an adult because he pulled an adult crime there. Hey, I saw another story, and again, I'm not, well, maybe I am pointing blame, I don't know. A patient allegedly caused an April fire at UPMC Hanover Hospital using a lighter while on oxygen. Let me stop there for a second. If you're on oxygen, and you use a lighter around oxygen, if you're smoking or something like that, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, and
this was in a hospital.
Yeah, the common sense leave the room here. I mean, you've got to really be. This one person is actually facing charges after police and hospital staff alleged she caused a fire inside a UPMC Hanover hospital in April by lighting. And here's what it says: risk a catastrophe along with misdemeanor charges of recklessly endangering another person and reckless or negligent damage of property by lighting a match or a lighter here, I guess it was, while being on oxygen. Really? I don't know what to say there.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't know that I've ever been in a hospital and thought, let me light an open flame.
Here's an update, ladies and gentlemen. If you are on oxygen and you're a smoker, there's a pretty good chance something bad's going to happen down the line.
And maybe just not have open flames in hospitals. How's that?
I mean, I'm just saying. It just seems like I don't know if that's the best thing here for you at all. I mean, I just use some common sense, for God's sake, will you please? I mean, I just worry about that the death of common sense sometimes, that people say, well, nobody told me. Well, yeah, no one told you to pour gasoline on the fire either, but I just...
You said common.
Someone once said, common sense is that sense which is most times most uncommon. I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but occasionally there's stories like this that maybe hint at maybe it's not that common sometimes.
Maybe it's not.
We'll take a break. We've got more to talk about when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show, the main street of York, and it's right here on WOYK.
Dr. Jones, you're a man of many talents.
There's some music that everybody knows.
Yes, sir. It was on this day, 44 years ago, in 1981, that the first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, was released.
Which, something happening every moment. It was like one of the great action movies of all time. And, of course, bred a whole series of Indiana Jones. I think the latest one was Indiana Jones on Geritol. Or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But
they've been making them up until very recent.
Oh, they did.
Up until the last few years.
Yeah, what was it? The golden something?
It's always something golden. Yeah, there's always a golden skull or a golden chalice or a chest.
Something it had, but they sold. I mean, the Indiana Jones.
Oh, they're great.
What was the latest one? If we can find that,
that is going to be a Google search.
Trivia
really
question.
Quick. Yeah.
By the way, while you're doing that, and I don't want to overheat right now, and neither does your battery. By the way, high temperatures can drain your battery faster than you think. And if your battery is more than 3 years old, which is older than the not quite as old as the Indiana Jones franchise, it might be time for a checkup. Keep an eye out for slow starts or dim lights in your car. That brought to you by Mitsubishi, Giambalvo Mitsubishi, and Giambalvo Kia right down here in New York at the corner of Roosevelt Avenue and Route 30. They have taken over the Mitsubishi and Kia franchise down there, and I'll tell you what, Giambalvo family of dealerships is a gold standard name right here in New York. They have done such a great job with cars over the years. Jack Giambalvo and now John Giambalvo and his family, and I'll tell you what, they've got a great deal for you right now. Price Lock Savings Event. Secure your deal before the potential tariff increases on some of the great cars they have down there. I just bought my Mitsubishi in February, and I tell you what, it's spacious, it runs well, it's got a lot of storage in there, which I need for my golf clubs and my wife. Not in that order, by the way. It's also got, just an unbelievable staff of people down there who are ready to help me at the service department. But whether it's a Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, a Mitsubishi Outlander, an Eclipse Cross, the Mirage, the Outlander plug-in hybrid, they've got them all on display right now down there at Giambalvo Mitsubishi right here in New York. I go by there every morning, by the way. I'm always still checking the inventory they have down there. And while I'm doing it, I'm also checking next door on the Kia. The Giambalvo Kia, they own that as well, and they are ready to help you today, whether you're leasing, whether you're buying. They have got a great car and a great price for you. And don't forget, right now, they're securing those and locking in those savings for you pre-tariffs. Yeah, they're doing it all for you. Give them a call today. You can call Kia, for example, at 717-628-3880. Or you can call their service at 717-628-3880. They're at 1305 and 1301, respectively, Kia and Mitsubishi, under the Giambalvo name, right there at Roosevelt Avenue in York. They're open today, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they are ready to help you right now make your choice. Get on in there and check out the great inventory of cars at Giambalvo Mitsubishi and Giambalvo Kia right here in York. At the corner of Roosevelt Avenue and Route 30, tell them Gary Sutton sent you today. WOYK News Time is 8:53. This hour, by the way, has been brought to you by Augie's Joint, located right there at Central Market. They're open today from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. In fact, they're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They got some of the best sandwiches you're going to find anywhere. If you're looking for a place to go for lunch today, I would say go to Augie's Joint. And maybe when you're down there, ask them about the hot Cheeto dog. Hot Cheeto, cheese, jalapenos, and sour cream on a hot dog. Or the loaded dog, cheese, bacon, sour cream, and green onions. Or how about this one, the Augie's Doggy? Oh, yeah, one of the great chili dogs of all time. And don't forget to ask them about the Augie's Burger while you're there. And they even have bison burgers on display. They all are right there at Augie's Joint. Brent and Jewel are making some great sandwiches every day. And Elijah, who's in there now, too, is getting involved in the act. Augie's Joint, one of my favorite places to go for lunch. And you can stop down there 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. today. They are ready for you. And just fun people. Jewel will give you a smile that will light up the whole Central Market. It's right inside the Beaver Street side at Central Market, Augie's Joint, on a daily basis. Aaron Anderson with me here this morning. He's going to be hosting on Monday. We're going to give him the mic back right now.
Gary, I did want to update you on Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay.
The most recent came out in 2023. It was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where all of the original cast members reprised their original roles. And it's the fifth and final installment of the series, probably because Harrison Ford's destiny was to stop making Indiana Jones movies.
There it is. And his destiny is eventually, like all of us, we're getting too old to do it. I can't run like that anymore from the rolling rock behind me. There it is. I thought you were just holding on to the mic there. I thought it was going to take the jaws of life to get it out of your hands. Out of my cold, dead hands.
He had important information.
He did, and he imparted it so well, did he not?
So well done. 1981, Gary.
Okay.
1981 was the year, this day, that movie came out. Now,
my daughter was born.
Your daughter?
Yes,
I was 5 years old.
Thanks.
1981.
Yeah, rub it in. You do that so subtly, I noticed.
But 1981 is that long. Chase is over here saying,
you were 5 and my daughter was born that year.
That sounds like World War II to me. That's like how far away that is.
Oh, jeez. Just stop.
1991, Gary, we passed this news up this day. I grew up in Chicago. I think you know that, right? My Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, won their first NBA Finals against the LA Lakers.
Yeah.
1991.
Some guy came up the other day and said, well, you always talk about Michael Jordan being the best. LeBron's the best. I said, LeBron couldn't carry Michael Jordan's sneakers. LeBron is a great player. There's no question about it. Great player. Michael Jordan was the greatest championship leader of all time, if Muhammad Ali was here. All time.
The GOAT.
Twice. Wins 3 in a row. Twice. Wins 3 in a row. When's the only time Chicago did not win during the Michael Jordan era? When Michael Jordan went and played baseball for a year and a half with the Chicago White Sox minor league organization. He was okay, although one manager said if he'd have stayed playing, he could have been really good. But Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball championship winner of all time. He won 3 in a row, twice, with an ordinary team around him. Good guys. Good playoff type guys. Not championship guys. And 2 times, 2 different makeups of teams, and Michael Jordan won it. Thank you very much. The greatest of all time. I'm with you on that.
I'm going to say amen. I'm just going to say amen to that. I have great memories of watching the Chicago Bulls. I actually got to go see them in their old Chicago stadium play the Detroit Pistons. You probably remember Bill Laimbeer.
Oh, yeah.
You hated it. So hated. His first game ever, it was held to 0 points. I witnessed in person in Chicago Stadium. It was amazing.
You know what was amazing? Is the Bulls tried to beat Detroit, who was winning the NBA championship for a number of years. Couldn't do it. Michael Jordan went out and put on weight. He said, because he got beat up every time they played him. So he went out and put on weight and came back, and they ended up starting to beat the Detroit Pistons and sent them down to second on the tier later on.
I remember he bulked up. He bulked up to 220 pounds.
He did.
I'm the same height as Michael Jordan, so we're both 6'6".
6'6".
But you don't have the same game as maybe a little leaner. He can jump a little higher than I can.
Michael Jordan was amazing, and what he did to prepare to beat teams was incredible, including coming up with all kinds of things that people might have said about him. He was a master at putting out a reason to go out and beat teams. Guy scored 32 on him the one night. Next night out, they played him out at their place. He scored 32 in the first half on the same guy. So, I mean, come on.
Fierce competitor.
LeBron James, great player. Same as Michael Jordan? I don't think so.
Not necessarily.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, thanks to you, Aaron. And good luck on Monday. I don't know if I come back or there's not a show that didn't go well. Yeah, no. But thank you also to Chase today for being with us here. Thanks to Augie's Joint for sponsoring this hour. Stop out there today, 10 to 2 at Central Market, right up here in the middle of York. And you can receive one of those great Augie's dogs or Augie's burgers that they have, and they're becoming known for. I'll tell you what, fantastic place to go, just inside the Beaver Street side of Central Market. Revs baseball tonight, 6:10. Darryl will be on the air with that. And then 6:30 first pitch against Hagerstown as they try to win their 14th straight against Hagerstown and try to stretch out that lead a little bit more in the Atlantic League. Coming up tomorrow, right here on the Gary Sutton Show, as I'm running out of voice right now, we're going to have Ted check-in tomorrow morning at 6:35 here on the show. We'll also have Jim McClure on tomorrow, our York County historian, and a whole lot more as we keep our eye on all the news that's happening around you. Thanks for joining us today. I am Gary Sutton. It is 9 o'clock.